call the meeting to order because it's that time. Randy said he was gonna be late. I was told Selena wasn't here. We got Laura, who's on the end?
Mike Murphy.
Mike, is Mike coming, do we know?
We don't
As
know.
far as I know.
Okay.
Don't know.
So why don't we start off like we always do? We'll start off with introductions. Hey, how are you out there? We love audience too, so you get to introduce yourself in a minute. So I'll start off, Rich Werner, with the study committee. John?
John Everitt, the consultant.
Dwight Bonham, Vice Chair of the committee and representative of Wardsboro.
Which way are you going?
Oh, I'm sorry. He's the recording guy. You can't see him on TV, but he's good. Go ahead, Bill.
Bill Antone, Superintendent.
Carol Ann Johnson from Marlboro.
Go ahead, boss.
John Moran, resident of Wardsboro.
Joel Teitelbaum, Wardsboro resident.
Oh, you moved to Wardsboro?
I'm Anita Raphael, Wardsboro.
Or great minute taker?
Peter Barris.
Chip Hickory, Dover School Board.
Lucy Gratwick, JQ Public Marlboro. Jill Dean, representative for Wardsboro.
Dan MacArthur, member of the study committee and a school board member involved.
And we've got, we have Randy Capitani, a member from Dover possibly coming, and we have maybe Mike Murphy coming. We haven't heard different. Additions and deletions to the agenda. Lucy.
Yeah, I have one issue that I'd like to bring up from last week.
And that is,
It's around the 7th and 8th grade.
so if we put that under the information for previous meeting that needs to be answered, are you good with that? Is everybody on the board okay with that?
Yeah.
To bring that
That's
back
fine.
up? Okay, so we will be doing that under, information from previous meeting. We're gonna put 7th and 8th grade discussion. Okay, and that's Lucy, 1 second. Everybody good with that? Any other thoughts, additions, deletions? Okay, there are agendas on the round table, if anybody wants one, and if anybody from the group, and then I have, Carolyn, do you mind getting Lucy one while you're up? And then, I've got a few things to hand out as we go along, but I only made 10 copies because we really haven't had any public, before. Okay, next thing is, we have approval of the minutes of the September 8th, 2016 meeting. Does anybody need copies of that? I have some. There's 3 pages. Anybody need a copy of the minutes? Okay. You know, just hand them out if anybody wants them. There's 3 pages, top 3, and then we'll just put them back with the agendas. Okay, if nobody needs one, is there anybody that'd like to make a motion? Or are there anything anybody noticed with the minutes we need to correct? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, Laura moved and Lucy seconds. You caught up with us, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or any nays? Hearing none, the minutes pass. Communication plan. Action to approve. So I'm sorry, it's not Lucy,
That's
this
the
is
thing,
Anita,
right.
Okay,
And where's
so-
the thing I just gave you?
right here.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
that listy thing, I forgot to keep
That
a
was right
copy
here?
for myself.
Okay. So here's
That one.
what's going on, folks.
Thanks.
We have been, and I wish Randy was here. Randy's gonna be late. Do you have a few minutes? Can we?
I can, absolutely,
Jill,
wanna skip it?
Or are you all set to move forward, or you were the other kind of cog in the communication thing?
I think
You-
we're all set.
You wanna move forward?
Yes.
Okay, so the first thing is we wanna finalize communication plan and review the report from the subgroup, which was Laura, Randy, Jill, and Selena, so we're missing 2 of them. So if you guys are ready to move forward, we have an agreement that was hammered out. We have a PR memo, some items that Anita would like to discuss with us. And then also, she had asked if we could discuss a list of media, because people may not may be familiar with some other outlets that Anita isn't. So why don't we start with the Finalize Communication Plan? So that's this one you want us to pass out.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll go some this way, put the rest of them that way, and then they go out to the audience. So discussion memo for the meeting on 9/22. So question 1, add to blog site, yes or no, members' bio sketches.
And I had sent a sample of just a 3-line thing, so-and-so I work at, I'm from, I'm this, I'm that. And so, do you want to provide those and include those on the blog site and in future PR? It's a yes or no.
Okay, so what does everybody in the group think?
I think anything that makes it more,
Relatable.
credible, believable, is good,
Real.
yeah.
All right, so as soon
Well,
as
hang
you,
on, hang on.
Is there any detriment to having that on?
I'm sorry,
Is there any reason not to do that? I mean,
I can't think of any, no.
Okay.
I just didn't want to go and assume that was a given without.
So I'm always, on the other side of the fence. It's not about us, it's not about the committee, it's about what we're doing. Why are they doing a bio on us? And that's my only concern. It's not about me or about anybody here, it's about the work and where we're trying to go. And I just think maybe that detracts from it a little bit. I wouldn't mind maybe working with Anita and doing the bio of the group, that the group is made up of people, but again, I've always been, a lot of times I'm on the wrong side of a 4-to-1 vote. Yes, ma'am.
I think if it's brief,
It's-
I think if it's brief, I don't think we need big lengthy
Yeah, it's
bios,
3
but,
sentences.
blah, 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 from which town, represent,
So
like a,
how does everybody feel? The majority want to do that? Okay, so why don't you send that out again to
I will.
everybody, and everybody needs to respond, because if you don't, you're not gonna be on there and you won't be famous.
The next item was front porch. I've added myself to Wardsboro, and it covers the Dover one with a checkbox, but I can't log into Front Porch Marlboro without coming up with an alias, a fake name, and a fake address.
Dan MacArthur.
So if
Marlboro,
I
Vermont.
forward my post to you, will you Front Porch for Marlboro for me?
I'll figure it out, yes. Go ahead and send it to me. I'll find somebody who knows how they can just allow you to post directly to it. I'm pretty sure we can do that.
Okay, otherwise I have to
You have some board-
create a thing.
Does that, right? Why don't you forward it to Selena, because she can actually do it, and she's back in a week, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. In the meantime, if you're putting stuff out, go ahead and forward to me. I will post it and
Okay.
we'll make this.
Yeah, because I contacted Front Porch and they said no.
Yeah.
Number 3 is clarify verbiage for the tagline to be added to all press. Rich, you and I talked about this briefly when we reviewed some copy that I had sent out. I don't have a copy of that with me, but it was the thing that appears on your minutes with one sentence that's directly off the 64-page document.
We have on the top of our agenda, this grant is for working towards a merger of the Dover, Marlboro, and Wardsboro school districts to form a unified school district operating either pre-K or pre-K-8. And then we also had that we are community members from Wardsboro, Marlboro, and Dover who may serve our towns in a variety of capacities, who are tasked with working towards an agreement that will form a new educational school district for our towns that meets the goals of Act 46, which is to provide better and more educational opportunities for students in these 3 towns. And there's actually, right over there on the agenda, it's right there.
Right.
So is everybody good with that, using that as a,
Right, because it should be included in all releases, whether they pick it up and use it or not. At least we can say, well, we sent it to you. So that's why I think it's important to have that verbiage available at all times.
with a link to the website.
Yep, it'll be in there.
slick?
Okay, the next item is assistant building lists. Riss mentioned this. If you all could just comb your address books and start sending me stuff people who you think ought to be on the email broadcast. Laura had done that dummy list 2 weeks ago, and I've been building off of that. But all the more names you give me, it's good. The political parts, Rich and I talked about this briefly. Sitting legislatures, this election campaigners automatically add links to their sites from the new blog site, or simply inform them that they can link back to the site if they wish. Rich and I discussed this. We didn't come to any conclusion. We thought y'all should have input on it. So what I mean by that is, for example, Jeanette White and Laura and Emily along, they have all their own legislative websites. So does the committee want to link your blog site to theirs, or do you want to just let them link back to you? And campaigners as well, that should extend to people who are campaigning.
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask you what you think.
I think, just have the campaigners link back to the site if they're, if they,
And legislators.
that's what I mean. Have the
Will they do it?
legislators
Will
just
they do
link
it?
back to the site. Well, if they don't, I think it says something, right?
And I think that way, nobody can get upset that they weren't allowed into the site, that we didn't contact them, so,
Leaving people out.
yeah.
I just thought I'd ask.
I mean, you can list all your legislators, But
Somebody's
I'd
running
prefer not to.
for a party that we don't know of or something, how do we know to reach out to them, so, I think we should do it that way, let them,
Link back. So I'll inform every campaigner that I can find, every candidate, every legislator, and inform them that that's available. I've already done some.
okay.
Links to outside media. So in other words, if the Reformer publishes an article, or Randy, or somebody else, 7 Days Vermont, or Vermont Digger, do you want those links to come into your blog site, your website, or do you want me to tell you what they are first? You can screen the commentary, screen the article, and then say yes or no, link, don't link. Because as Rich and I discussed briefly, there's like 1 million Act 46 comments on Vermont Digger. Obviously, I'm not gonna list them all. I'm gonna find the ones that pertain to this group and this study committee. And so I put 4 on the blog site right now, 2 from Deerfield Valley News, 1 from Reformer, 1 from Vermont Digger, just to see how it looks and how it works. But if you want to screen those links first, I'm happy to present them to you. Otherwise, I'll just go ahead and throw a bunch on there. And the reason they're on there is for further reading.
I'm just gonna jump right in, Anita. So are you including the original publication as well as the comments that are attached to it? Or
No,
only
they
the
just
original?
go, it's a link, it's not copy. I'm not
Right.
pulling the text in, I'm
Right.
just saying, here are a bunch of sites where you can go get further reading. So once they click on to say Vermont Digger or Reformer, then they'll see all the comments. So I'm not
Okay.
editing.
That sounds great to me. The more the better, it seems to me. Get it out there, get it available.
All right, so the committee doesn't feel the need to screen those.
I don't think anybody.
Nor should we?
Yeah. My concern when we talked was just, sometimes things are not, like some editorials that are publishing different things are one-sided. They're not really helping, they're somebody's opinion. And I just didn't know how much of that we should put out there. So that was why I said we should ask the group how we thought it was best to do this. Yes.
I mean, I think if it's about the work of this group, right, that's written by a news source, I don't know about op-eds and that kind of stuff, I mean.
I guess I will say, I think if a periodical decides to publish it as an op-ed, that it should be included.
If it's about this committee.
If it's
Right.
just a comment that somebody put out on Facebook, no, but if it's published, for instance, in the Brattleboro Reform as an op-ed, then I believe it
Right.
should be.
I wasn't so much thinking letters to the editor, but something
Okay.
that, as publishing cred, as Dan says.
Okay.
So,
Perfect then. Oh,
does that mean that we're not gonna get on that site what other committees are doing? What's?
No, I'm gonna try to screen those for news articles and things that are picked up or created. So for example, in the future, there might be reporters at these meetings, and they might publish an article in whatever paper they're in, and we'll find that link and we'll link it directly to the site.
I think if we ask Anita to try and capture all of the
Sure.
conversations happening throughout the state, that we're just setting ourselves up for
No.
trouble. I mean, she can easily set up a Google alert to capture, like what's happening
Yeah.
here.
Right, I did a Google alert, so it'll come back to me as soon as it's published. WCSU site, link back to their A46 site or post a separate original material. So what I mean by that is the WCSU site has an Act 46 section with about 5 or 6 tabs on it, and those tabs have the minutes of these meetings and other meetings and all that kind of stuff. So my question to you is, do you want all of your tabs on that WCSU site, on our Act 46 committee site, to just go to the WCSU site, or do you want me to upload everything you do as original material? And the difference is they leave your pages to go to the other site to see minutes, for example. Unless I upload the minutes directly, and then they stay on your site. The people stay on your site. Do you see the difference? Is that clear? So with a click, I can send them off your blog site, or with a click, I can keep them on your blog site. It's your choice. If you feel it's important that they go to the source, WCSU, to get that information, I get that. But if you think you want them to stay on your blog page, then I get that too.
So you would start putting all the materials on the blog site.
Right, I can upload it directly as documents to the blog site, so they never leave your pages.
Could we do it where the minutes are
Everything.
on it, but not, they can leave the site for other things? Or does it have to be one or the other?
No, it can be both. So it can be, click here if you want to read the minutes on the WCSU site, or click here if you want to read the minutes here. It can be both.
One of the comments I think I heard last time, or maybe in the emails going back and forth, is we can't control what other websites do. So, let's just say Joe Blow has this wonderful website, and we say link here, and you get all this great information, and all of a sudden Joe decides he doesn't like his website anymore and blows it up. Then there's, you can't be checking the websites every day. So I think most of the stuff about this committee should be on the website, and or on the blog, because we want to keep them there. But I can't see, like, your question about the Act 46 workbook. That's so big, and that's a state website. Let them go to the state website for that. But
Okay.
I think things that pertain specifically to stuff we're doing, they should be able to find it there, and we not have to rely on somebody else to maintain it. And not that they don't do a good job, but it just, we have no control over that.
Right.
Carol had a comment.
I just want to say, communication best practices, you keep them on your site, you don't want them to go elsewhere.
Right. Well, I didn't want people to think we were co-opting somebody else's information. That legitimately, it should be on the WCSU site, but surreptitiously, we're publishing it on our site. So that was my only thought. That's all it was.
Bill, do you have a thought? Comment, or you?
I think the easier you can make it for people to get transparent information, do it.
Yeah, that would be directly through this blog
Yeah.
site.
Okay.
Um,
Laura, hang on, Laura, then Jill.
I mean, if we hand it out at the meeting, or it comes to board members at meetings, I think we should give Anita some good direction.
Right, we send her everything that you guys
Send me
get.
Anything that comes to a meeting, we load up on the site.
Yeah. Jill.
That's about what I was going to say too.
Okay.
I think that would be ideal.
Slick.
Okay.
Moving right along.
Number 8 on the agendas, when you send out the early agenda, if you could write proposed on there, so that people know that may have changes by the time it gets to the meeting site, because you're gonna be giving me these 10 days in advance-ish.
You know what I'll do is update it up top, because every agenda is really proposed until we sit
Right.
down and call the meeting to order and then do the additions. So I noticed like on this one, there's no date, and that was my fault.
Alright, so,
So,
yeah, I added it for you.
Okay.
And on the minutes, if you could write the meeting date on the top line, I think a couple of them didn't have the meeting date on the top line. That makes it easier for people to know they've got the
yeah,
right page.
And I think minutes should also say draft. I suspect that everybody does that, I think, right, Peter? Until it's been approved at the next
Right.
meeting, it's theoretically a draft.
Right, and what I,
For everybody, but that's what I do.
Yeah, there you go.
right, and what I would do is post the draft, and then when the final, just swap them out. Number 10, press releases. What can I write about? Give me some stuff. Do
Yep,
you want me to
it's
write
all good
about
there.
hiring the consultant? Do you want me to write about the grant funding? Go back on that. Do you want me to write about the committee budget? I have time now between now and the next meeting to issue a major press release. So what do you want in it?
What do you guys want to, go ahead.
I think those 4 things are great. I think naming the committee members, because we haven't put that out.
A little bio on our consultant.
Yeah, maybe that, that there have been meetings, right?
In that, the other side of the side by side is hard at work, and they've got they got a better consultant than we did.
They have the same-
I think that's an interesting point, is that John, the same consultant, is is acting for this committee as for the side-by-side as well, so. I
And
think
he's
we'll
got
be-
experience with the group too, he's worked with them before, and he's worked with this district before.
Okay.
And maybe a timeline of some sort. to-
We have a timeline, and we're gonna discuss that later in the meeting, so that'd be good.
Yeah.
The A46 workbook just linked to the state.
That's
Sorry about
pretty
that.
big, isn't it?
It's, yeah. And then number 12, that timeline page, I did not post that. I didn't know if that was postable or not, so I'm asking permission to post that, yes or no?
Yes, and I think we're gonna go over it again tonight, so we can maybe, if we have to
Update it?
update it, yeah.
Okay, unless you guys want to add something on these blank lines that I put on the paper.
Is everybody good, or has anybody got any thoughts?
Do you want a 5-second recap of what I did so far?
Hang on, let me, on the lines, Dwight, you had
I
something?
just
on
had a
the
question
line?
about, does someone need to approve the press release before it gets sent out? And how-
He'll look at it.
He'll look at it.
Yeah, that's the one we
Okay.
had set up last time,
Okay.
and if I'm not
Just
around,
double
you
check.
have to look
Oh,
at it.
okay. Hopefully you're around.
Are you
Okay.
posting the workbook or not?
No,
We're gonna link
Link
to
it.
it.
just a link to that, because that's a pretty large thing. Anybody else, any thoughts on what we, anything else that we can give her, or any other comments? Carol Ann, you're big into communications.
No, I just made that one, no, pretty thorough.
Okay. Then let's go, so are you okay then, Anita? You got
I'm
everything you
good.
need?
I just want to take 2 seconds to run through a few of the things I did this week, and then you can go to the contract.
Sure.
So this little piece of paper, I didn't make copies for everybody, but this was a flyer that went to the principals of the 3 schools, and they agreed to send it home in backpacks before this meeting. And they said they would do that for every meeting. It shows that this is the address of the new blog site, what is this, the new blog, and then the date of the next meeting. So there'll be some little half-page newsletter like this that I'll try to send out at least every other week so that it can go home. All the principals have been added to the mailing list. I did send out a public service announcement, not a full press release, but just a public service announcement about the meeting. I'll continue to do that. I started the blog site. I created 7 or 8 tabs on it. I started a FAQ. There's not a huge FAQ on there yet because we haven't got any Qs to FA yet. So once questions start coming in and the committee, I bring them to you all and you all answer them, then those will get posted as Q&As. There's a place on there where you can send me your email if you want to get on our email broadcast or ask a question. The meeting schedule's on there. The PS public service announcements and press releases will be on there. The homepage is pretty just, at the moment, it says site work. It's just, we're just getting started on this, and within the week, we'll have a lot more info on it. So that homepage will be redecorated by the beginning of next week. And then, what else did I do? I talked to a lot of people and asked them, if they would help. Laura and I communicated about getting people to be aware of the blog site and all that. So that's what I did, and I'm just still building. Every day I do a little bit more on it, and so in a week or so it'll be framed out pretty good. And if you guys would look at it and just say, do this, do that, it's just doable. So if you don't like something on it, or you want to change something, or you want to add something,
Well, let me know, so that, and then I'll go to Anita. Remember, we don't want to have a bunch of people all attacking her.
I'm more than happy to make any adjustments. It's easy to change, quick. There's no photographs on there now of anything. I didn't know what to
And
illustrate.
then you've linked to the video, right?
Yep,
For
I linked to the video. I haven't done that yet, but I have to do that. That's coming.
Okay, hang on a second. Jill,
Well-
did you have, or Lucy?
Well,
sorry.
I was thinking of the thing the principals you're sending home. That's the kind of thing that could also be posted at the,
Right, I told the principals that in my emails. I said, post it.
at school,
You know,
but
bulletin
also,
board this or send it
for instance,
home.
at Marlboro, to be posted at the town office.
Yeah, the town offices, they're all on my list
Okay.
now. They've all been notified. All 3 town clerks have been
Right.
notified to put it on their town websites, on their calendar of events, for their town websites. I do the website for Wardsboro, because Wardsboro doesn't have a town website. I just do it as a public service. So it's on there as a click, and all of it links back to the blog site.
Mhm.
So everything comes back to that.
Jill, did you have anything? Did you have a question or comment? Okay,
Oh, good.
Carol.
So,
front porch, you mentioned that when you're gonna be forwarding Dan something for front porch, is that going to have this thing that went home with kids in their backpacks, is that gonna find its way to front porch?
Oh,
so
that'll
that-
be more of a straight public service announcement for front porch.
I'm just
Um,
wondering like how like the general public that don't have kids in schools, how you're reaching them.
Right, if you go to the front porch, this meeting was posted, so it's
Okay.
probably on the last newsletter for Wardsboro for front porch. The
Wardsboro.
Wardsboro newsletter, the Wardsboro front porch is Wardsboro, Jamaica, Stratton,
Right,
and
so we need,
She'll send it to me and I will get it on our front porch
Okay, that's-
until I can figure out how to.
right.
right, so I'm just trying to figure out how do we replicate the communication that's happening in the backpack, so that the general public, people
Well,
like me
it's
that don't have kids in
front
school.
porch, it's press releases in the media that, of the
Yep.
newspapers that these people read. It's on every town website. I did send public service announcements to the radio stations, but it's highly
Yeah,
unlikely they would
right.
pick up a school type meeting.
I was just interested in that particular form though that you had.
I don't know, this was just a super quick, kid-friendly, mom-friendly, I don't have
Yeah,
time to
and-
read a whole lot of stuff form.
Right, which is what I'm thinking, front porch,
Right.
whatever too.
Right.
Right, so it'll find its way.
Okay, so is there, yes, please, sir.
I was just wondering if there was an opportunity at Election Day for this committee to produce some sort of, here's the work that we've done, here's the work that we're planning to do, here are the dates of future meetings, just kind of a update on the work that you've done, because you're gonna get a ton of people at your 3 locations.
Where would it be?
The polling places?
Yeah.
Well, you know what, guys, ladies and gentlemen, the communication subgroup now has nothing to do because we're gonna hire Anita here in a few minutes, so Laura, Randy, Jill, and Selena, it sounds like a heck of a group to put something together.
I do have a question.
Is that a motion? I'll second it.
Go
Wait,
ahead.
I just walked in, wait a minute.
Well, that's why we did it quick, Randy, before you got your wits about it.
I'm wondering about radio,
Radio.
as far
We're on
as,
TV,
would that
it's even
be,
better.
as
No,
far as like an interview, or would that be helpful? I don't know, to get the word out further.
why don't we leave that to the the communication subgroup
Okay.
to make a decision?
Yeah, when they have those morning talk shows, that should be included, I think, that's a good idea.
Okay. And you got that, Peter, so it shows the minutes, so we'll have to read the minutes. Are
I'm
we,
sorry, the last thing you said?
about getting on some radio, some of the public talk shows, like they used to have open mic and open mouth.
Okay.
and- What is it, it's, the Fish does something, he does some public service.
Chris Lenoir
and
has
Chris
Green Mountain
Morning.
Mornings.
So, but that subcommittee will work on that. Yeah.
Because I'll send the radio stations the public service announcements, but it's highly unlikely that they will either post it to their websites or talk about it on the air, unless you're committed to do a call-in show.
Okay. So list of media, where's the information going? You kind of covered that. Do we want to do anything else with that?
It's going anywhere and everywhere we can think of. So news amalgamators like Vermont Digger, they generate original news, but they're also news amalgamator. They pick up other news sources. 7 Days Vermont runs a great news amalgamation website. So anywhere, everywhere, online, in print, in paper, the Bucketville News in Wardsboro. I asked them from now until March to run a little box ad with a link to the blog site. So in the online newsletter, that'll be a live link, and in the print version, people will have a little box ad that they can look at and remind them that they can keep up with the committee work on that little ad. I don't think you want to buy paid ads.
No.
You want to, right?
I think
We're probably
we're
the same
spending a budget. Why don't we get Lucy and then Carol?
You have the Marlboro mixture?
That was what I was
on
gonna
your-
say, too.
The what?
The Marlboro mixture?
Nope,
Okay, it comes out every other month, so it would have to be a different kind of
right.
summary of what goes on.
Can you send me that link?
Yeah,
But just
Thank
the
you.
block, like, just the same idea.
but
Right.
there also could be an article.
Yeah, sure.
More like a public service
Yeah.
announcement, until I can hook up and do a, broad press release. There ought to be one out like next week.
Well, I'll send you the.
Great.
Everybody good? Randy, I know you came into this kind of late, but we didn't give you too much to do.
It's okay,
So,
I have confidence.
okay. So then the last thing is the proposal. So, the group, Jill and Randy and Laura and Selena worked hard on this. So we came up with an agreement, to hire Anita, to provide professional services as follows. And I also told her she could start early, but I didn't feel comfortable signing the contract until you guys all approved it. So I said, if they disapprove it, you've worked for nothing so far. That's why we had all this other stuff first, in case you guys decide not to. So the service provider agrees to the following responsibilities: collect, collate, and format for PR distribution information provided by a committee, distribute formatted PR to various media, print, social, mailing lists, others, perform other tasks at the direction of the board. Expenditure for the term of services, the amount is $40 per hour starting September 12th through March 10th, 2017. Mileage when necessary to travel paid at the rate of $1.25 per mile. Timesheets are due January 1st and March 10th. And total estimated payment by the Act 46 Elementary School Committee Board not to exceed the amount unless amended by the board of $2,800. And Anita agreed to kind of keep track of that and let us know if we were, if it's now October 1st and we're at $27.59, we're gonna have to rethink it. So that is the agreement. I have 2 copies. It's actually gonna, it's an agreement with Wyndham Central more than us. And the superintendent was good with it. They got a spot for me to sign as board chairman, and then Anita. So if you folks wanna do this, I would just need a motion to authorize the chair to sign, the agreement with Anita. And Bill, did you have any comments? You're all good with
No, the
everything, right?
committee kept me in the loop completely, it's great.
And then the committee, any comments, and then we'll get to Dan? Go ahead, Dan.
I was just wondering, I know we had talked about a figure of 2,000, and I know there was some extra money in our budget that was not specifically allocated. Everybody should understand that we're looking at a larger figure than that. I'm not speaking against this, I think it's a good idea, but it is more than what we had thrown out as our preliminary budget number.
And we actually, Bill had gotten, had contacted a business person, because that was that free radical we weren't really sure of. And we had really estimated a lot higher than we thought. And again, we're kind of just guessing at this, so, but we think we can do that, and we're just gonna have to monitor it. Is everybody okay? Is there any other discussion? So if somebody would just move to authorize the chair to sign?
I move we authorize the chair to sign this
Okay, so
contract.
Lucy, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Randy seconds it. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any extensions? Today is 9/22/16, first day of fall. School.
10:22 this morning.
Lucy, there you go. If you want to sign, and then you hand it to Bill, he may even
You've got
sign.
us mixed up. That's Anita. That's Anita
Right.
and Lucy.
I didn't wear any.
They're saying, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'm
He
kidding.
does that.
Okay,
You gotta see the
Catching
town.
you at the beginning.
you know what? We're running late. See, when you guys, you stress me out when we run late. Okay, so information from previous meetings that needs to be answered. So early on, Lucy asked us if we could go back, and we had a discussion about 7th and 8th grade last meeting. We kind of came to a consensus that we would go for a pre-K through 6 study. And Lucy asked if we could rethink that, or she could talk about it.
No, it's mainly that, for transparency's sake, I feel I need to make it clear that that's a real showstopper for me in accepting these articles of agreement. And I will do everything I can to get the best articles of agreement for all the kids that we need to serve. But by pulling the rug out from under the 7th and 8th grade in Marlboro, I won't be able to vote for it. So I just wanted to have that out there. And I don't expect a reconsideration, but I felt in the middle of the night, many nights this week, that I needed to say that.
And I know that's been, I mean, going back and previous to your being in this group, and previous to Dan even being back on the Marlboro board, we've had, it's been a big discussion, is because Marlboro and Stratton were kind of the odd schools out. Dover and Wardsboro were kind of the similar, and then the Leland and Gray towns were similar. And that's been one of the things, and it was, I think it was a long, hard vote for the Marlboro group, and you've got two board members here that can, tell you that it wasn't an easy vote for them to agree to
Yeah.
come on board, but they felt that was the best at the time, so.
Well, and I knew it when I came on the committee, that was probably gonna be the situation, but I wanted to make it clear where I stand.
Well, but we also, the group agreed, Marlboro, Dover, and Wardsboro also agreed, though, to consider the 7th and 8th grade, and that was why I made that suggestion last meeting. Especially because after talking with John a couple meetings ago, it was a little bit, it probably we would have been told no, but it was a little bit different than what we were thinking, but two of the Marlboro members, out of 3, were okay with it, or actually Dan had made a pretty big point about not trying to do that. Let's look for the K through 6. And then we get to determine at some point in the future who's necessary and
Right.
who's advisable. And that would be a good time to also bring that argument up if we're going pre-K through 6. So let me just one more time, last time, and since we kind of did it by unanimous consent last time, I think I just want to make sure, is there anybody that would like to reconsider possibly doing a K through 8 study?
I'm sorry, that wasn't clear.
Is there anybody in the group that would like to reconsider the possibility of doing a K through 8 study instead of a K through 6 study?
I mean, I know that it's not possible, so I don't really feel as if a vote against it would make much difference.
The other, it's interesting, when I first got on the Dover School Board, the chairman at that time we would discuss things till everybody was in agreement, and I wasn't in agreement. I finally said, you know what, we all don't have to be in agreement, just a majority of us, and
Yeah.
it's not bad to have some dissenting votes,
Okay,
and
well,
so,
I'll listen.
okay.
I'm not voting against it. I did want to say I apologize publicly to Lucy because I think she felt sort of blindsided by my comments, and Selena agreed with me at the last meeting, so I apologize for that. And I guess my central point for making that was that I don't believe that there are members from either Dover or Wardsboro who are going to go for a 7-8, and it didn't seem like it was worth prolonging that, the agony over that, but I think Lucy was kind of taken by surprise, and I apologize for that.
Okay, so we move on? Everybody okay? So, information from previous meeting that needs to be answered. So John was gonna do a write-up on the administrators, and he has a handout for all of us. So while he's handing that out, I'm sorry too, while we were talking, I handed some stuff out, and I had a couple copies from back there, and what it was just kind of the notes back and forth, with Anita about what we were gonna be doing, and some thoughts, just so people know where that conversation was, and to keep everything up. So John, at the last meeting, summarized his meeting with the administrators, and all 3 administrators were there, Francie Marbury from Marlboro, Matt Martin from Dover, and Tammy Bates from Wardsboro. I got there late, and they were pretty much done. They left that. Summary of discussion. So, you wanna just run through it, or does anybody wanna have questions, or?
Let me preface it by saying the way I typically do this and the way I did it this time was to meet with them, write up what I thought they said, gave it back to them to say, take a look at this, make sure it's what you said. And they had a chance to do that, and they made a couple of changes, but by and large, it was pretty much what they said.
This is basically a summary of what you reviewed, it's not.
It was it's very close. This is more detail on what I reviewed, and maybe in complete sentences instead of mumbling along, but.
I have a suggestion, and my suggestion is that we incorporate this, in fact, not only this, but get a further description of what the principals feel does make their schools individual and is crucial to that individuality. I would like to see those built right into the Articles of Incorporation, and so my proposal is that we go back to the principals, this being a great starting point, and say, give us a list of the things, let's build them into our articles, which makes Dover or Wardsboro or Marlboro individual and that they feel is important along those lines.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I agree with Dan. He probably put it better than I said at the last meeting, but I think it's important that we have some language in there that keeps the culture of the individual schools. And you know, we've talked about that future school board that might come into existence with an affirmative vote of whatever articles we draft and have approved, so it's a pretty nebulous thing at this point. But the idea is our articles have to give them guidance, and I think part of that guidance has to be to keep the cultures of the schools, at least for the foreseeable future. You know, I mean, 10 years from now, who knows? It could, I'm sure it'll all be different again, because if you look back 10 years ago, it was all different. But, you know, we need to give them some guidance and some structure. So I totally agree with what Dan's saying.
Are you okay with that, John?
Yeah, just the way I would suggest doing it is an appendix and
Yeah,
to the article.
and that's what we're
Not
gonna
next
kind
to
of
the
use, because I think it's easy to say, but I think it's really hard to put into writing and formal articles of agreement. So maybe the appendix is the right way.
Yeah, so to be a report that talks about your study, the articles, and typically some references to appendices that you don't want to clutter up the, you know, the actual report, because you want the report, the citizens to be able to read the report and without going into every little detail in the report, but have things in the appendix, attachments that go with it.
And, John, can those, the appendices then, do they have the same weight if, 4 or 5 years down the road? Are they something that the new committee will have to live by? Or can they say, well, we threw those out because it wasn't mentioned right in the articles themselves?
I would say, and of course, you know, so much of this is subject to legal interpretation down the road, but that if there's something in the articles, that's gonna hold more weight into the future than something that's just in the report. That said, I would say that an article that references the notion of keeping individual cultures, and then, you know, without it going into detail about what exists now, and then you have what exists now in the attachment, would come a little bit closer to being something that they'd sort of need to look at. I think you have to be very careful about what you put in the articles as far as, you know, things that might need to be changed. And you don't want anything in there that would have to be, needed voters to approve to change, you know. So if Dover didn't want to do the International Baccalaureate anymore, you don't want that in articles that, you know, just would get sticky. You know, I don't know that they'd have to do it, but it would leave something open for somebody to say, hey, wait a minute, we all voted that Dover is going to have the IB, and now you're saying, you know, I'm just using that as an example, but, so you don't want to set yourself up or set the next board up for real difficulties.
That's what they talk about a lot, is tying the hands of the board by making things so stringent. The other thing too that's come up a little bit too on that, Dan, is where's I reading it? One of the articles, it talked about how if you make it too, I'm sorry, it was one of the articles that got turned down by the state board because there was too many restrictions, and that it didn't allow for flexibility to accomplish what Act 46 wanted us to do, is to be able to be flexible and fluid and move. So we also have to be careful of that too. But you can put in a short time period. You can say, you know, like they've always talked about, no school will be closed for 3 or 5 years, or, you know, no schools will be closed unless the electorate of that town votes. And then somebody was joking, said, well, get it so that 100% of the electorate has to vote. And, you know, that's never gonna happen. Laura, you have a comment?
Yeah, so with this, I think, thinking about the hurdles that these articles will have to go over, which are multiple, thinking about how we would want to frame these. Okay, so first of all, what's our intention?
Hang on a second. We're gonna do sample articles in a minute. Is this more of an articles question, or is this more of information from other meetings?
I'm happy to come back to it, the articles, but I would like to, I'll try and be really brief if I can, okay? I think that it's important to think about, first of all, these articles this process is for us to see if we can provide equitable opportunities for kids. That doesn't mean the same opportunities at every school. And so when we're talking about these, I think it's important for us to express what we're talking about in that way, right? So it's important to us, for instance, if I'm hearing correctly, to maintain the distinct cultures so that the kids in all these 3 towns, if we were to vote to do this, have different opportunities that they can choose from, right? That's my
Within the
suggestion.
schools, they could go to any one of the 3 schools, but the schools will be different.
I would say, I think we need to think about framing things in that way, as how is this an opportunity for the kids? I just kind of offer that out.
Okay. Are we all good? Make sure though you bring that in your articles too, so we remember. And, yeah, and you're gonna be.
Look at some notes, yeah.
Dwight?
I guess I'm just not quite understanding. So if we're starting out by just kind of setting the tone for the rest of the document by the things we're looking to accomplish with keeping individuality, and then we get into specifics moving forward. In other words, keep this in the back of your mind kind of thing as we go forward, or is it going to be specific? You know, I know
We're
we're
gonna have to decide that when we
right.
come to the
So I'm
articles.
just wondering what kind of weight that will have in the document itself. It's just basically
Well, we
something to
have
keep
to
in-
decide that when we get to
Well,
the articles.
Okay.
So if it's really important to everybody that in the articles, it says that every school is a distinct personality, and this school likes brown, and the carpet color can never change because the school colors are brown, and you folks really wanna put that in there, then that can be in there. But if you don't, you know, it doesn't have to be, I mean, but that's more in articles, that's not, what this is, these are questions that we've had that we're going through to help us kind of start working on the articles. So that's what I'm saying is, you know, one of the things Dan and Randy brought up was that there's 3 distinct schools because that came from the principals. So we need to keep that in the back of our minds, which is what I think they were saying when we go to the articles, but we're not discussing articles right now, we're just discussing information that we've been asked to gather or things that people wanna talk about. So I was just trying to keep us in that, but when we get to the articles, I mean, you know, if Wardsboro's, you know, got different colors, and that's really important to them because that's how the school was started by, you know, then we can talk about it.
Okay.
And then we'll have to make a decision how important it is to the group. Is everybody okay with that?
And I think it's fair to say too, we're not gonna decide this any given night, but, you know, John understands hopefully what the discussion is about, figures a way to work it in, to draft the articles, and then we go back and say, no, we need it farther forward, farther back, or whatever.
Okay.
Okay, so moving, I passed out some answers that John and I took because we're supposed to gather some information. I think there was one coming across the back, and this is yours, John. So the second thing was post-polling on studies. Somebody had asked, is there any polling, like why people, when they left the polls, did they vote or not vote? Or was there any studies done, you know, after an election, after articles were turned down by the voters, why they were turned down? And all I could find, and I didn't get hold of the VSBA lady, was if you go online, there's all sorts of articles, but they're more like editorial articles, you know, like this is why I didn't vote for it. I don't know, I didn't see anything where there was specifically that somebody went out and did some type of scientific poll that they use consistently on all of them. So I didn't know how important that was to us. So if we want to try to dig into that more, we can work on it. But it made sense to find out if things got voted down because people want to make sure the school colors would never change. You know, that would be something good for us to consider. But I don't see anything that kind of specific. Do we want to try to spend more time on that, or do you want to let that go for now?
Let it go.
Okay.
I suspect there's nobody doing that kind of.
I was thinking that maybe like the state would be doing more, but more in-depth studies in the 3 school programs, outcomes and poverty gaps. And John is working on that with the state achievement data, but you didn't have that yet, do you?
No, I don't have that yet. And the other thing I'll do is in-depth information on schools, what we just talked about a few minutes ago about specific programs, make sure that that's all together too, you know.
And that, I think that covered the language, and everybody knows what the poverty gap is, correct? When we say that, you know, how students that are in poverty perform educationally versus non-students, because that's one of the big things with the special ed study. I know Bill and I and Abby, I think, or somebody else testified here about that to the Senate or to the House. I know Laura and Emily were there. So that's been a real thing that people are very concerned about. Articles that have been rejected by the AOE or BOE. So this is interesting, and John, I'll let you talk to this one because you got this information.
They really told me that they just work with the districts to get articles that are gonna be okay. They haven't really, at least that's what they told me. They haven't really just rejected articles. I remember when we did the red study before, they worked with us on, and said, you know, you really need to work on this piece. And then we went back and worked on it and came back and brought it, and they were okay with it. 2 months later, they changed their mind, but that's okay. So that was the information I had. They don't just reject articles, they work with districts on fixing articles that will pass muster.
And that happened with the Wyndham Red.
Yes. the red-
Because
the red
the
committee.
way they wanted to do the voting didn't satisfy the constitutional requirements. So they made some suggestions and they gave them a couple options, and then they brought that to Wyndham Central, and we got to vote on that at Wyndham Central, so, that's working with them.
So at this point, all the ones that have gone to the BOE have been accepted eventually?
That's what I've been told.
As far as you know?
No.
Oh.
I didn't see any rejected ones. I have heard people on this committee talk about rejected, or maybe they're talking about rejected by voters. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the whole different.
Yes,
Well,
that's a different.
So, well, to be technically, the Board of Ed, or the AOE, one of them rejected Wyndham Central's red.
Yeah.
But it's not that they just didn't say, okay, this is no good, go away. They said, okay, we can't accept this,
As is.
so maybe
Right.
it's just the terminology, and maybe we shouldn't be saying rejected
Yeah.
as much as they needed some other stuff. And the important thing, the reason we wanted this was so that we don't fall in the same pitfall, because we're on kind of a tight timeline. So if we come up with a plan that says, you know, Dover gets 22 votes and the rest of you guys all get half a vote each and you figure it out, you know, they're obviously gonna reject that, that doesn't work, so. I
They're being
mean, we-
very responsive. Any questions I've had and sent to Donna Russo Savage, who's highly talented, was a former legislative law
She was
drafter.
ledge
Right?
counsel for
Counsel.
the education.
She
And
basically
now
wrote
she's-
the law, didn't she, Laura?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, so she's being extremely helpful and responsive, and it's great.
Do you know if there's the same response to schools that are offering an alternative structure? Are they,
They're just have the draft rules out now on what that would even look like.
so they haven't had a chance to either reject or
I haven't seen
modify
any alternative
those?
structures.
Well, I don't think they're really looking at alternative structures yet.
Yeah, I don't think there is any that have gone up there, because that's kind of like the last thing, and so I'm not aware of any. Laura, have you heard of any? Bill, have you heard of any?
I think that the way that the plan, the state plan looks,
They kind of need these groups to complete their work before they even know the landscape of which they can then understand where an alternative structure would fit into.
It's kind of interesting to me that when I read the law, it was as if the alternative structures had more to do with what the state was going to do than districts, asking for these sort of exceptions. So, is that the way?
That's definitely how I read it.
So it's sort of like this kind of turn in how they're thinking about what alternative structures even means. But that's just from where I sat.
John, I was wondering, when you talk with Donna or whoever at the AOE, then are they willing to give specific examples of things in articles that they have sent back for review so that could avoid some pitfalls, or do they simply say, we sent so-and-so
Yeah,
back?
no, I really haven't
Gotten that far.
That's a question we should ask.
Yeah, that's a good
It
question.
would
I'm
be
sure
helpful
they
for
would be.
us, so.
So-
You think they would, Laura?
I think they have to.
Yeah.
So what, your question was things that they've sent back
Yes,
for clarification or to
or
type?
modification.
I think the word,
We
I
can
think the
ask,
word
I
we're
just
looking
want to
for-
tell you though that response time, I want to be careful about what I ask for up there and when I ask for it, because it's like I really want to make sure when I ask for something, it's something I really need and I need it back. And so I don't hear anything that you're talking about doing that comes near to a rejection kind of. But
No, I should rephrase that, I mean, just if they saw a part of an article that that they said, we'd like some clarification or work on this. Are we gonna have access to those parts of the articles, just to avoid doing the same thing ourselves?
Yeah.
That's a question, but it doesn't need
It
to
would
be
be
solved right now.
pitfalls. What pitfalls have they seen
Yeah.
that they can, and that's something they probably should put out for everybody. They don't even
Mhm.
have to say specifically it was her district that did this thing, but
Right.
these are the pitfalls we've seen, so why don't we call
I
it?
don't mean to be obstructive, but I'm gonna be a little bit, because their workload is huge, and their staffing is not huge. And,
Well, they
but
brought
we
it
can,
up.
I mean, like I said, I can ask, I'm just,
Right, fair enough, fair enough.
Well, hang on, Laura, you hang on. Randy, Laura, Carol.
Well, I think what we're dancing around here is, we need to be prepared that whatever we send up to them, they are gonna wanna see revisions. And I don't think there's any reason to carry your point forward, there's probably no reason to burden them until we actually submit something to them, is that right? Is that a
That would
fair
be my-
interpretation?
yeah.
And then I think we as a group should just expect that there's gonna be revisions asked for by them. And that's not unusual in any kind of process, right?
And they'll be seeing things as we go along. It's not like we're gonna, you know, things I bring to you that I think are at all controversial, I'm gonna have Donna look at it.
Yeah.
So, so that I'm not bringing you something that's just, you know, totally impossible or would be rejected.
Fair. You're all set, Laura, Carol?
Well, it's much like writing a grant. You know, what's helpful when you're writing a grant application is to see, well, who was awarded their money last year, and can we see their grant application? So the successful mergers that have happened escape me at the moment, but those that have already moved forward, can't we see their articles?
We have.
We have, oh,
I
sorry.
copied some text.
Yes, no, we brought them.
We have, all right, sorry.
They're 2 lines down. We're gonna get to them. in a
All right,
second.
because I'm just thinking that's,
Yeah.
it's like writing a grant. It's just awful.
Okay, so I think, John, you make a very good point, thank you for that. So why don't we're gonna not get too worked up on the rejected stuff right now. Articles have been voted down, so we have a whole list in there, if you go online, you can look at them. Maybe we can try to I can try to find them and get them to you, and you can throw them as attachments too. And then the side-by-side articles that have been approved were the Franklin County, and Chittenden County had one, but people were kind of like, they didn't like that. I think Lucy didn't like that one. And then phantom enrollments.
Before you go to that,
Yeah.
so here's a little bit of a twist that we talked about last night with the Leland and Gray towns. And that is, if, I hope I get it, I stepped all over myself last night talking about this. First of all, I got them confused with you, so it was like, okay. In the middle of it, I said, wait a minute, you are the Leland and Gray towns. But anyway, so they're looking at hopefully a unified system with 5 towns, with the schools and the high school. However, they are looking like they're not gonna say everybody's necessary. They may even say everybody's advisable. And if they get 4 towns, that it would be a go. Okay, so that's called a modified union school district, a MUD. Okay, they don't like, they doesn't like it like.
Well, we don't care what they like.
So anyway, so if they do a modified union, the question is, does that satisfy the pre-K 12s of a side-by-side for you? So, right now, what I'm being told is that, at the State Department, is that that's a question that hasn't been answered. There were a number of people last night who have worked on the law and say, yeah, that they're not gonna be able to deny that the modified union school district doesn't satisfy the side-by-side. So it looks like we're in for some politics and maneuvering and power moves to try to get that question answered. To this date, nobody has asked for that. So nobody's been, no one's, the State Department, the State Board, or anyone hasn't even been asked to answer the question. But there's a chance that you're gonna be in that position of asking that question. So Donna knows that this is here, I'm sorry?
No,
Okay.
just.
So that's just a little bit of a wrinkle right now. And, you know, I think we should go with, at this point, with the notion that it would meet the side-by-side requirement, but we'll keep pushing.
We have no
and saying-
choice.
There's nothing we can do about it here,
Yeah.
so.
So anyway,
We
so,
just need to keep going forward.
so that's just a little bit of a wrinkle in this whole
The
thing.
only good thing is if Vernon was to decide to come on board with us, and we have Marlboro agrees and Dover and Wardsboro, then we're four and then we're fine, because we don't need the numbers, we have the board,
That's
we have
right.
the group, but we
That's
don't
right.
have the. Okay, perfect. Phantom student enrollment for each district, Mr.
So
So-
that is part of
The financial
a
model,
financial
which is
model.
next.
Is that next, so we can do those
Yeah,
together?
so financial, phantom enrollment students, we talked about them, everybody knows what a phantom student is, it isn't the one that scares you on Halloween, but it's when you get money for a student that doesn't exist, and that's been one of the things that everybody's been complaining about, that us small schools get too many phantom students. And then we talked about financial modeling, so John, lead us through this when he gets around.
Okay. I would request that we do it piece by piece, because there are so many numbers here that, with a little bit of discussion, it could just become chaos, so.
So do you wanna go through the whole thing and then take questions, is that what you're saying?
I think it makes sense to go through the one there are 3 sections, go through a section, take questions, next section, take questions.
Let's do the basic financial information, 2016, 2017. John,
Yeah.
tell us what those numbers are, and then
So-
if there's questions, we'll go.
So here's just your basic stuff, comes off out of your town reports, basically, the 3-year study. The number of equalized pupils, how much you spend, equalized education fund spending per pupil, and your homestead tax rate. So that compares the towns across. The reason Vernon is shaded in is because
You have a special deal.
the division doesn't work, and they have a different rate, so there's some kind of special deal going
Yeah.
on there that I have not uncovered. And
It
not
had
gonna
to do
spend
with
your
the
money
new plan.
uncovering it, yeah. So, that's the straightforward, questions on that one?
Okay.
I think just a clarification that Marlboro, because 9 through 12 is included in that, I think we pay more in high school tuition than Dover and Wardsboro do. So that's one of the things that factors us up. It looks like we have a higher tax rate.
This is all students, this is everybody, K
Right,
through 12.
I know that, but I think one of the reasons we look more expensive is that I think we pay more in tuition, because we pay Brattleboro's charge tuition.
We pay more because our Burn students, we pay a higher number.
Is that higher than Brattleboro? I
Yes.
don't know
Yeah.
that.
Yes, it's substantially higher than that.
Okay.
Brattleboro.
But the point is, those are the decisions that you've made
Right.
for the current budget.
Everybody good with that section? Any questions, comments? That's pretty basic.
It seemed to me the next thing to look at was the state supports. Oh,
You got a question on top section?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Would it make sense, is there any value to doing per pupil in the elementary schools, like doing it, I know that we're looked at as a total district, but so that we have a sense of the resources that are going into the schools as opposed to the secondary, just throwing that out there, if that's
It's
helpful.
easier to take the numbers and show what the tuition is and how much each school paid in tuition. The problem we've always had trying to break out the elementary and the per pupil spending in the elementary is that we don't get good numbers,
Right.
equalized numbers. It's more of a big equalized number. So it's always been really difficult, and unless, I don't know if we've ever been able to find that. We've asked and.
what I do have is I've taken your budgets and looked at them and subtracted out special education and, seemed like there was one other thing I subtracted out.
Transportation, maybe.
I don't think I subtracted transportation, but, and then I said, so how many kids are enrolled?
Mhm.
And I looked at how much you spent per enrolled child. So I do have that information. I didn't put it on here, but I can certainly bring you that. So, you know, to look at that, if you're really interested in sort of looking at the elementary school spending, you can do that. It doesn't take into account small schools grants or any of that sort of thing. I can bring you that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, may I just, one more of it?
Oh, pre-K, I took out pre-K, that's what it was.
Just in terms of our budgets, really the piece that we have the most control over, with the exception of designating high schools, is the budget in the elementary schools. And so really having a sense of what are the choices that we've been making about investments in our elementary schools seems like it might be valuable information for us to consider.
Sure, so I'll add that, because every time I do a document like this, my thought is, this is a document that then gets attached to the report, so we're not rewriting everything. Okay, so the second section, saying, so looking at state supports, specifically the small school grant and the phantom students, what happens if those go away? Because that's always in the discussion about do small schools and the enrollment protection go away. So I thought it would be interesting for you to look at what happens. So let's just take Wardsboro, for instance. So they have an $83,000 small school grant, and they have their protection of 6.88 students in the phantom student category. So I took the spending per pupil from the first section and said, well, let's remove those two state supports, and what is this new level of per pupil spending? Then I looked at your thresholds that are given new this past year, new formula this year, to see what the penalty would be if those supports were taken away. So I show the excess spending penalty. And then it says, so then what would the homestead tax rate be if those supports weren't there? And then I just did a difference that, the difference between your current piece and the
Okay,
the
Bill.
revised one.
So John, would it be fair to say that those columns, that section here, is that what it would look like
If you participated in an alternative structure?
The legislature's gonna have to answer that totally. But
Okay.
I think this is the worst case scenario if it were an alternative structure, or if you did nothing and the state board assigned you somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
I think there's a good chance of that. Of course, people have been saying that for 10 years, so it just depends on what. But I mean, in the law, they're talking about these things going away.
Right.
Well, the
Because
law
the-
actually says they
because
are
the-
going away,
Yeah, because the incentive, yep, I know, but
unless the law changes.
But the incentive is that you get to keep them. So that's why I thought they was significant to look at.
Thank you.
No, I think they're very significant, because if you don't do anything and they do go away, that's what people have to look at.
Okay, any questions on this middle section?
Everybody good? Well, that section, buddy.
So then I said, so what happens if we look at this as a unified system and put all the equalized pupils in, all the ed fund spending, and then so what is low-hanging fruit that we could just pick off as far as savings go? Right now, we've only identified 2. You may have some others. So subtract those, then look at, is there an excess spending? Now, I used, there's no threshold for this unified system, so I just did a weighted average of the existing thresholds to figure out what that threshold would be. And in this case, there would be no excess spending, so penalty. So that it would be 0 compared to 103,000 paid in the current year in your existing budgets.
The problem with the audits is we're figuring 10,000 per school, we still have to do one, so it's only 20,000.
What did you mumble? What did you just say?
Oh, on the audits.
Well, there's
If
4
Vernon
districts,
were
and you
included.
go.
Oh, you're still including Vernon.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Vernon really helps us bring our rate down.
We have 4 audits, 3
No.
audits, 4
No.
districts, 3 audits.
He's counting Vernon, I wasn't counting Vernon in this part.
Yeah, at this point, the instructions were to
Right.
keep
No, you're
Vernon in there for now.
That was bad.
So anyway, so there wouldn't, I would predict there would not be any excess spending penalty.
Where's the threshold here?
It's not shown on here, but what I did was, did a weighted average of all the 4 districts' thresholds.
Okay, and you don't have that number?
I can get it for you.
Okay.
Let me come back to that and
Yeah.
get that.
Dan, go ahead.
I would like to ask John if you could to give us that same projection using only Wardsboro, Marlboro, and Dover at a future time,
Mhm.
because I think Laura's point is Vernon probably skews this disproportionately. So it'd be nice to know what these three towns look like.
Happy to.
Randy?
I would echo Dan, I was gonna say that too. Plus, I think also we should just look at Dover and Wardsboro.
Right there you go.
Or maybe we should look at Dover and Marlboro too, I don't know, you know?
No, I built it,
Be
so
aware.
Look at all the
So
scenarios.
he can do that, it's not a huge issue.
I wouldn't think that'd
so-
be difficult at this point, but I think these are great, I mean, overall. And are we on to section 3 yet? Yeah, we are, right?
yeah, so I was
Yes.
just finishing that up. So there's a unified, that would produce a unified homestead tax rate of $1.55, and then with the 8 cent to help this, put in there to help the transition piece.
The bribe.
Well, but it's a recognition too that it does take some effort. That was a nice discussion last night at the other committee, that
Yeah.
yes, it's incentive, yes, it's a bribe, but it's also a recognition that it's difficult to do this, and that there ought to be some support for that. So this just shows you sort of a projection of what it would look like if it were in place this year.
Hang on, don't let Randy go, because you're gonna get more questions.
Well, I just think, particularly the third part here, the projection will be a key thing in whatever final presentation we present to the voters, because for me personally, I know a big question a lot of people are gonna have isn't gonna be about education quality, it's gonna be about what it's gonna do to my tax rate. And this shows it's not really gonna do much to it, particularly, Marlboro's gonna save some money if you follow these numbers out. Everybody's basically gonna come out ahead of the game, at least in the short run. So that's, I think, one big hurdle that actually looks like it won't be that complicated to get over.
Depending on Vernon,
What?
depending on Vernon.
Yeah, well, I think even without Vernon, that's why we need to look at
Well,
the
I think
numbers without.
Vernon's
But Vernon
Vernon
definitely,
really skews it down, and the other problem is this is comparing a future budget to a current budget. So, the projection that, what's his name had done, Bud had done, showed, and because the average school, what is it, 2-point-something% increase over the last few years, so they actually increased everybody to that 2.8%. But then you're not really comparing like what could have been, so this is a good comparison of like
Yeah.
this current year, if
Could have
we'd
been.
had this.
and
I
I
think that's
think,
where we need to stick with. Yeah, go ahead.
having sat in the audience for many town meetings and school portion of town meetings, the simpler we can make it for the voters, and as long as we're not giving them wrong information, the better. And stay away from the things that complicate it in people's minds.
Speculation.
Most voters have trust that the school board can put together a budget that will function for their building. So the reality is, what's the bottom line, what's it gonna cost me, what's it gonna do to my school? Those are the things we have to really be able to answer. And I'm just looking at the end game here.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Anita.
Speaking simply as a
Anita.
member of the general public, how long do you think it would take to explain a form like this to the typical voter? Like, you all know what all this means, you have so much background knowledge, but if you walk into a meeting where 30 or 40 people just off the street have walked in and you're trying to explain this is like a 3-hour meeting to
The
explain this.
Dover voters will have it pretty easy.
To your point, like how,
We don't explain all this to them. I think that's the point. We talk about the projection part of it, and we can have materials available to show how we got there if we want it, but I think to try to sit and explain it to people who haven't spent a lot of time looking at school budgets is a difficult, if not impossible, process.
The important thing is to have it so that when the 5 people that love numbers come up to you and say, how did you
Yeah.
get that? How did
Exactly.
you get that 3%,
Yeah.
3-cent tax
Yeah.
cut? You can say, well, here's how I did it, and
Right.
you're ready to explain it to them.
Right, exactly.
I think that's important on a sheet like this,
Yeah.
not that you try to explain it to everybody.
And just the only reason I'm saying Dover voters is because we go over these forms every year at town meetings, so our voters are used to, since Act 60's been in place, is we review the numbers and how we got to this, and what a CLA means, and what a.
right, but I've been in those meetings myself as a reporter for Mike and Randy, and I've watched poor Dr. John stand up there mopping his brow, trying to get us to understand one line on one chart of one page, and there's 6 pages. So I'm sympathetic to the people ultimately down the line who are gonna ask the question that Randy asked, but then also think, this is like, what, a magic trick?
But wait, we just hired a PR expert to take care of all this.
The answer
I
to
don't
your-
do spin.
The answer to the earlier question about the weighted threshold was 15,755.
Wait, I'm sorry, I missed that. What's that particular?
Well, the question was, what threshold did I use to determine that to project there would be no excess spending penalty?
Oh, right.
And I used a weighted average, and that number is 15,755.
Bill, sir.
Joy had something first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dwight.
I'm always nervous, I keep saying this, of putting anything out to the public, and everyone's eyes always goes to the bottom line, and if you hand this out, or in any kind of shape or form, someone's gonna say my tax rate's gonna go down, and this actually isn't a projection. What you're telling me is this is what it would look like last year. So to use the word projection makes me nervous as well, because we're projecting that the tax rate may go down.
That's a good point.
Great
And-
idea.
And so those two things,
Reflection.
yeah, this is not a projection, this is a model
An analysis.
or analysis of last year.
A reverse,
The
a
current year,
reverse.
but yeah.
Reverse it. So, you know, we put this out, you're telling me my tax rate's going down, so, or at least
So it's an
everyone accepts.
analysis of the current year if combined with Vernon.
Yeah, it's not a
If combined
projection.
with 4 schools,
Right.
Thank you.
with 4 above schools. Everybody okay with that? Hang on a second. Everybody good with that correction? Sir?
So just something to think about that you guys have all mentioned is, when you think about the voter, the thing that a citizen's very familiar with is receiving their tax bill. So it could be extremely powerful, and it might be worth mocking up, to Dwight's point, that if this law was in place, and if these decisions were made, this is your tax bill, and literally give a mock-up of the tax bill. Well, you can say this is a model of what it would look like, because you're not projecting. This is what it would have looked like. I'm just saying, if you can communicate in ways that people really are comfortable with, the information, I think it could be very powerful. Just something to consider.
Okay, you know, we're gonna get, when we get into the articles, we're gonna have to also then come up with how we're gonna sell this, or how we're gonna present this to people. And I think this is all stuff that we could really get hung up and spend an hour, as Anita said, you know, trying to make it so that everybody can understand it. So why don't we just absorb this for now? I agree, we really need to make the correction that Dwight mentioned, because again, we don't want people to look and say, well, can we vote for that now, retroactive, so I can get my tax bill? And just let's think on this, because, you know, there's been a lot of good points, because it's a big change too, because the way, we don't know how the tax bills are gonna come. We talked at the last meeting about there's a study group to look at combining CLAs for the towns, and that's gonna, you know, throw a curveball in. So there's gonna be a lot of stuff still out there. So we need to work on that, but that's just part of what we're doing. You good?
Just on that line.
Yep.
That first study, I went to their study committee meeting yesterday. They're looking at enabling language as opposed to mandated language.
Oh, so we
So
could
it's
do
a
it.
tool that you may allow.
John, you all set, then you've got your marching orders?
I did, I have.
I just make sure, I think, John, there were 2 separate requests. One to simply remove Vernon from the analysis, and the second one to do the analysis just over in Lawrenceburg.
3 versions.
3 yes, yep, great.
Yes, 3.
Everybody good? I know, John, it's been long, and I'm way behind on my schedule. Thank you for letting me know.
Let's just cut half the things out.
Well, yeah.
Too much.
Okay, representation of the board, how the board is elected. He's got that in the article, so if you guys are okay, let's skip over, we'll just skip that when we look at the articles. The leadership council, so Dan had brought up some leadership council stuff at the last meeting. So I have some stuff that was sent to me, and Dan has some stuff, so board shall, so there's 3 pages, I'm passing them out. There's some stuff that Bill sent out, and then there's some stuff from highlights from the Brattleboro So the first page is the district board shall engage with district communities. That's something that was sent to me by somebody, I don't remember. Oh, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. So page 1 of 2 and then page 2 of 2. So this is the stuff from Brattleboro, from their discussion on the advocacy council. And then, I didn't pass this out earlier, but this is the, public service announcement that was published by Anita last week.
Yeah.
So it's a 2-page thing, so I just wanna make sure everybody gets that. So this is what Brattleboro had as a reference for leadership councils. And Dan, you said you had some more stuff you wanna bring up?
No, I actually didn't, this is exactly what I was talking about. I knew they had them in the proposed articles for Wyndham Southeast, and I was proposing that we have something like this, some electable people within the town who can make recommendations or whatever to the merged board.
And
Yes.
I think the clearer the definition can be of where the areas of responsibility lie.
Right.
It's really.
Now, remember, when we get into articles again, that will be in the articles
Yeah.
if we decide we want that, how we want that. So this is just, this was some questions that were asked, this was a response. And then when we get to articles, we get a chance to, come up with some real language.
Thanks for doing that, Rich. I think this is exactly what I was talking about.
And then voting, not sure what this means. Yeah, we talked about voting, like when we vote budgets and, does each town have to approve the budget? Or if like half the people from all 3 towns, one more than half, does it count? Or if 2 towns turn it down and 1 town votes for it, then does it get passed, or is it an aggregate of the votes? The Leland and Gray, do you know how that works at Leland and Gray?
Total.
It's the total votes. So 3 towns could turn it down, but if a 4th town has such a supermajority voting for it, then it would pass.
Because it's a single district. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do each town clerk counts their votes and then reports to one person and one town clerk, or
Logistically, I don't know how it
Okay.
happens, but.
But is that something that goes in articles, or is that
Oh,
something
yeah,
that?
yeah, you have to decide whether it's, how you wanna do it, by town or by voter.
Okay, so that will go in articles too, so, any questions, answers, comments?
There's no real question about how it works. It has to be the aggregate voting population of all the merged districts.
It has to be. Yeah, I don't see how you
Yeah,
do
but
it.
So
we've
the
also
only
talked
question-
about, like, you can't close a school in a town unless the
Right.
electorate of that town, so then it's not an aggregate of all the towns on that voting. That would be
particular-
different, so that's what my question was, can we write an article that says,
Mhm.
if 2 out of the 3 towns vote down, can it be voted down? I don't know, and that was kind of.
You're
but
talking about
that's
the budget
Like
specifically?
budget or other votes that purchase I don't know, that was kind of the question, is how tight do we wanna make that, or how loose do we wanna leave that?
That sounds like a question to shoot when we get up,
When we
shoot
get to
up to the
articles.
AOE, right, when we
Yeah.
get to the
Well,
articles.
we will put whatever we want in the articles, and then assets and debts from each school. And that was because one of the things it says is, if this new district comes into being, all the assets and all the debts all get combined. So, if the day before we combine, Dan takes all his townspeople to Jamaica for a week on the school, we're all gonna have a pretty good debt, so.
Jamaica, that's not that far away, actually.
No, not Jamaica,
You can
Vermont.
rent a bus for that.
So anyways, John is working on that through Wyndham Central's office. But I don't think, none of the towns have any bonds, right?
We just paid ours off, so we
We
don't
just
just
paid ours a couple of years too.
Wardsboro doesn't.
Yeah, so we're all probably pretty much starting on this, pretty much the same footing. So, pardon?
Buying a bus.
We're talking about borrowing some money, but that's different than.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I'm
that
just-
would be in debt.
I'm just
Yeah,
thinking
that's
out
just-
loud.
Mhm, yeah,
Yes, sir.
We're gonna get into this more in depth with the
Yeah.
articles.
Right.
okay.
I'll just hold my comments for now.
Okay, so this was a lot to get through, and we did cover some of the articles, so I don't mind that we're a little bit behind. So sample articles, so John sent us out it said page 1 of 16, but it was only about 9 pages.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff
10
that's just
pages.
draft that wasn't
Right.
ready for
So,
prime time.
I just had one copy because it was a big section. I figured everybody should have gotten it. Did anybody not get it?
This is the what?
The sample articles.
Yeah, I think I got it. I didn't print it out though. Sample articles from where?
From John.
Did you send it out as an email?
Yeah, it sent it out, it didn't go with the minutes because I got it later, but I sent it out to everybody as a separate, as an attachment. Okay, so how many people want one in writing?
Yeah, I'll
Do
take
you
it.
want
How
me
many
to
you
make
got?
copies?
Can you please? You know,
We'll see,
you know how to
we'll
do
see
it?
if I do.
Just, it should just feed in, Laura, and, just hit how many, so how many people, raise your hand if you want to set. 1, 2, 3,
Sorry.
4, 5, any,
I'll take that.
get 7.
Did you get a picture?
We may have to share. So sample articles, I tell you what, because she's gonna make copies and we really should have them so people can look at them. I think Laura's aware of it, but I'm gonna skip over to parking lot, and I was just gonna cover the Jamaica vote. So, I don't know if everybody saw in the paper or the Digger or wherever, but Jamaica voted by 50 votes or 60 votes to not ask to come out of Leland and Gray, district, and I guess they can't re-vote it because it's been voted on 2 times, but I don't know how long that means they can't re-vote it for. So I would imagine we're probably not gonna see anybody from Jamaica, and they are participating with John in the other plan. And can you give us like a 2-minute update on the K-12 group? How far are they, or where are they at? or-
They'll be looking at draft articles next time. They are listening to principal reports right now. I just met with their principals, so they're gonna be getting that same kind of report from principals about the impact of a union on their schools. So that, I mean, they're about, a meeting and a half behind where you are, as far as.
So they caught up pretty quick. And are they using a lot of the red study stuff that was already done, or they?
There's been some sentiment to basically use most of it. So that's that's probably what I'll do for a lot of the draft. Again, as I said earlier, they're looking at this whole idea of everybody being advisable, so that they can, if they get any 4. Now, they have to qualify that because Newfane and Brookline can't be different. They either have to be in or out. So we'll have to write a little circular article that says they come in together or they don't come in.
They don't come in at all.
Yeah.
Why is that?
They have a joint contract school
Yeah,
that
okay.
they're in love with.
Yeah.
It's awesome. The commitment to their school is really, it's fun. The commitment between the 2 towns
Yeah.
to this school is very, very good.
The other thing I'm gonna pass out, and I didn't put it in the parking lot, but somebody had talked about the report on the Union School District, so this, John had sent me this is a law. Some of it got lost, but we are allowed by the statute, and this will let you go find it online, if we decide that we don't wanna propose a district, this committee can also do that. I was under the impression, since we took the grant money, we had to propose something, and John corrected me, we talked about it, and this is where it says that we don't have to do that. And the only other thing I wanted to pass around till Laura gets back is the elementary, John had done this draft of a timeline for us quite a while ago, and I thought it would be really maybe good for just to take 2 minutes, see if we're still on target. And since we kind of know the dates, and when we first did this, we weren't sure the dates. So October, our first meeting is October, going to be on October what? Somebody got a calendar?
I'll review,
You'll get the
update
dates,
this.
okay. So the first meeting in October is gonna be back in Marlboro. Second meeting in October will be back in Dover. And then the first meeting in November is gonna be in Wardsboro. And then the second meeting, which will be in Marlboro in November. And then December, we just plan on one meeting, and so that would be back in Dover. And then to see where the articles go. And so we'll get the dates on this. I think we're still pretty much online. Draft reports and articles are, for October, and approve a report, and we're gonna start that now. John will be able to take a bunch of this information. So our next meeting, we'll have a more complete set to look at. I think we've gotten almost 90% of our questions answered, and I think we're, getting darn close to moving on. Any comments, thoughts? So you'll just put some dates to it. and
I'll put the
then
dates in places and
locations.
update this for you.
Cool. Did it work?
I think so.
We went to the parking lot while you were out. So go ahead and fill you in.
Backside is
The
junk.
backside is junk, yeah,
Okay.
because I used the last strike here. Okay, so as she passes this out, those of you that are electronic and have your thing in electronically, why don't you start us off there, boss, and move right through?
So the first page is just sort of the cover,
Yeah.
and just need to
Oh, you got it.
make sure I get a date for Wardsboro, when Wardsboro,
We all voted on the same date, though. We all went to Marlboro School and voted together
For what?
To form the
to form
committee.
a committee. Yeah, they weren't different dates.
okay, I got
It
this
was
from your
May, wasn't
minutes,
it?
so that's so it's
We
confusing.
may have talked about it in Dover on the sixth, but
Is it the grants?
I'm pretty sure we all went to the same meeting date. We all met in Marlboro, the three boards.
Yeah, I think we had a reporter then, if
Yeah.
I remember right.
And those are warned meetings, and you all took
Yeah.
votes to do this,
Right,
okay.
we, Marlboro voted first because it was at their meeting, or was their school, and then I think Wardsboro voted in Dover, or vice versa.
That's fine, I'll put that in.
Okay.
We should verify that. I will do that. I'll look up the minutes of that meeting, May 20.
Okay.
Well, actually, it'll only be the Marlboro, because it won't necessarily cover.
We'll find that for you.
Yeah, okay.
We can get that through Wyndham
I
Central.
just wanna make sure that we don't
Yeah.
mess up on something simple like that.
Mhm.
I think June sixth is when we met here to form the committee.
By then, all three boards, I agree, I think you're right, have taken their vote.
And I have the piece in there for Vernon if they actually decide they're gonna do something, if you want to do something with it. So anyway, most of that is just boilerplate.
And I have my letter, I'll get you a copy of the letter.
I just need the date.
Okay.
So then let's skip to the articles. There'll be a report in there that describes a lot of what you did. In there, text that I'll write and put in there for you to look at. So the Articles of Agreement, I just gave it a name for now. It can be whatever you'd like it to be. My suggestion is, well, actually, I don't have a suggestion whether you name it or let the next board name it. That's really up to you. But if you have a different moniker for the articles, I'm happy to change that. So necessary and advisory is the first piece. And Dover and Wardsboro necessary, and Marlboro and Vernon advisable.
Well, let me ask a question too. Do we want to try to consider maybe taking a lead from the K-12 and say if any two of them vote together, if any two vote in the affirmative, then that's okay, and if it doesn't matter which combination it is, if it's Wardsboro and Marlboro vote together, or Dover and Marlboro, or Dover, Wardsboro, Marlboro?
That's your kind of.
What do people think of that?
I think it's a critical point. I'm not sure I have an opinion on it yet, but I think it's a really important point to consider.
We can make that decision at the end.
Yeah, that can, but just, if we can do that, that may be, I mean, we're all thinking that we kind of know what may happen, but we don't know what may happen, so it would be awful that, Marlboro votes for it and one of the other towns votes against it, then it can't happen.
But again,
Right.
exactly, that's why I think it's important to, if we can leave it a little more open-ended, I'm just thinking on the fly here, then maybe we should.
can you just kind of make a note of that?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Perfect.
There are a couple of places in here where I have an article that say or. You can think about it this way, so I'll just do an or, and then we can. My strategy is to get everything written and then strike stuff that you want to get rid of, just so we get it done. The next one just talks about the side-by-side and describing what has to happen on the side-by-side. And here's another question for you that's really comes up here. If the other Leland and Gray towns do nothing, do you still want to do something?
Well, that was kind of my question back in Wardsboro, was what happens if so I feel comfortable that if let's just say all three of us said, yeah, we want to do this. We don't meet because we don't have the fourth school, but the Leland and Gray towns decide not to do anything, then I think we're in a very strong position to go to the board and say, hey, look, we want an alternative structure. We spent all this time, we did our part. It's not our fault. They didn't want to do their part. Leave us alone and let us be an alternative district.
And that's an advantage to all the towns, I think.
Right. I would say too.
The question is whether, and you can always do that. The question is whether that makes you,
Does it make these not valid though?
no, it makes, well, it depends on how we write it, but whether or not the incentives are there for you.
Well, I think we can argue that too, because, you know, but I mean, that's to cross that.
You set
that's
yourself
fine.
up to argue it,
Right.
is the deal.
So that's another thing that he'll put in there, and we all need to think about. Do we want to put something in there that if the Leland and Gray towns decide not to do anything, then this becomes null and void? Or do we want to try to move forward as an alternative structure?
As three towns or two
As three
towns.
towns,
Right,
or
whatever,
two,
or whatever.
whatever combination.
I don't have an answer yet. I'm just trying to think what protects us as towns from a state mandated consolidation. Which is better?
Well, I think some of this will help protect us,
Yeah,
because it
I
helps
think-
us
I
to
think-
argue.
That's something we all have to keep in the back of our mind, is there's so many variables here and so many things that could play out. So how do we protect ourselves and the towns?
Again, just thinking on the fly, I guess I would say, go about this in good faith, as if
Yeah.
Leland and Gray is gonna form the unit with which we can be a side-by-side, rather than putting right in here, if they don't, we wanna do something else.
Yeah, yeah.
But then be ready to jump when it happens, but rather than build it into
Right.
that would be my thought.
I see a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
think you're
head
right.
nods on that. Okay.
But that's something I think we should think about too, because we want to also protect ourselves in case, because we don't want to be a victim. We don't want to have something done to us because of more outside influences than we have to. You all good, sir?
Yeah, there was one thought that came to my mind that vanished, so if it
Can't.
comes out. Old age is hell, I tell you. So the grades included, this is where, you know, we have K through 6. Wait, what did it say, K through 6? Oh, no, this is the,
Just pre-K.
skip that grades included Article 2, huh? Oh, that's just misnumbered, that and mistitled. That's your agreement to continue things that are already in place. I'll rewrite that, but that's very boilerplate, you have to do it. So then Article 3, grades included.
So actually, can we jump back to Article 2 there, just for a second? I mean, is there going to be reference that because, right, I guess that does say that, because we're all members of WCSU, will continue to be so, that all of the work that's been done to date will just be continued to try to consolidate things. I guess that really is exactly what that says.
Well, if Vernon comes along, they're not currently a member of the WCSU. How does that work?
If they come along and say, yes, they are.
They will
do
be at
become
that point.
WCSU.
They have no existing agreements with WCSU. Does it matter?
Well, but they wouldn't exist anymore, it would be this new union. Vernon,
Then, okay, yeah. All right, let's, I get you, let's not argue it too long. Just
Could go on.
playing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
But that's, again, I want to reemphasize that. Remember, if this gets approved, it's no longer the Dover and the Marlboro and the Wardsboro and Ord Vernon school, it's whatever this new school is, you know, and it's not like I'm a teacher in Marlboro, you're a teacher of this new school system that's assigned to the Marlboro building or whatever, so just, everybody needs to keep that in mind.
It's hard to do that, but yeah.
Excuse me, why don't you just, for working purposes, come up with a fake name for it?
We kinda have, it's a WCSU Elementary Study group, so it would be a WCSU Elementary.
WC?
No, I meant-
WCSU.
We see. Sounds like we see or something.
Be so careful.
No, I think if anybody's, that comes up with a creative name, we can,
They're marketing, we can like name the new school system, and we can have a prize.
Contest.
Yeah, we've got some of the namers
Just
of
have
the
an
Dead
essay
Sea in this
contest.
room, so I think we do need to be careful. The, question about the, consolidation of management and education, he's not listening to me. So in Article 2, talking about continuing to move forward with consolidation of management and educational services, master employee contracts, blah, blah, blah. Is there anything?
Where are you?
On the
Article
Article
two.
2, still, page 3, bottom.
What was the question?
I mean, Dover, we have a number of individual pieces right now, actually. Dover and
Yeah, but we're
Marlboro.
not supposed to.
Well, I know that. I'm just wondering, at some point, we may need to address, so we've got our own contract. Dover has their own contract, Marlboro has their own contract.
Well, when we get to Article 5, that'll be more explicitly.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, okay.
in Article 4, I highlighted Vermont Public Schools. I just wanted you to talk a little bit about this notion of transportation. It seems like I heard some of you provide some secondary transportation. It's either that or some of the secondary schools send buses to you, and I don't know which it is.
No school sends buses to us. We contract or we have our own buses. Nobody sends a bus to Marlboro, do they?
No, but we don't send any buses to any other than public schools.
Right. And I don't think, Wardsboro, you're the same, I think. You don't send,
High school buses?
you contract through
West River.
West River,
Right.
but yeah, no school, Burlington High School doesn't send a bus down to pick up any of our kids, so.
No.
It's all the individual schools either have their own buses or contract for services, either through a bus company, a school bus company, or a public transportation group.
Yeah, I think the article protects you from anybody saying, hey, I'm attending a public school in Burlington, you
Right.
might transport me. I think the way it's written works, but that would be a good lawyer question.
Yeah, how does that protect you? I'm not sure it does.
No,
Well-
we need to get that out of there,
Yeah,
because the new board will have to decide where they wanna send buses to, or where they wanna contract.
Well, that's why it says regarding any transportation which is to be provided to publicly funded students. So,
Transportation's not required.
right. But we can take it, you can take it all the way up.
Yeah, let's,
But you have to say how you're gonna,
Yeah.
something about transportation.
okay, Randy, go ahead.
could it be as simple as changing will be to may be
Yeah.
responsible? Could it be that simple? That sort of leaves it a little more open-ended for a future board.
No, you have to be responsible.
No.
It's about whether you're limiting it to elementary students or not.
There's no requirement in law for schools to provide transportation, only if it's in an IEP, it's required. Unless they just recently changed the law, and I'm not aware of it.
That doesn't mean we can't require it.
Right, but I mean, the state doesn't require it, so.
But you still have to be responsible for anything that you decide to do as far as transportation.
So that's why,
all it's getting at.
I think we should pull that out, and that we'll be responsible for providing and coordinating with any transportation in the future.
So nothing in the articles will mention transportation?
No, that will.
Or
You
how
wanna
about,
list the specific schools?
Hang on, Carol.
Sorry.
Well, we got Dan and then Randy, and then I'll let you go.
Well, I think we should try to keep it in there somehow because, for example, we have a sort of a mishmash right now, but it actually works pretty well. Marlboro contracts with WCSU, and I like the fact that this references that. Dover must do the same because all school districts,
No, we have a waiver.
Well, we get that waiver, but we still pay them and they pay us, kind of a thing. But I'd like to see that be able to continue, so I'd like to have this somehow built into this, so that Dover can continue to do what it does, Marlboro can continue to do what it does through WCSU, which is kind of the way it is.
I think this is a question that we get a lawyer to look at and say, does this language put you in a bind or not legally?
Well, let just Randy and then Carol had a comment. Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, we're probably gonna need a lawyer, but I'm thinking maybe it needs to be more along the lines of coordinating with WCSU and its policies and just take out the rest of it. So that leaves it, I think the more open-ended, the better. If that makes sense? Just trying to help find a solution.
Carol?
I was just gonna say, provide a specific list of schools or geography you're willing to travel to.
Outside of what you would call it.
Okay, so, John, I'll let you kind of cipher through that and put in what you think is appropriate, and then we can hammer on it again next time we review it.
Yeah,
Everybody, you know, these are the things we need to be thinking about, so that when we go through them again, then we can bring this stuff up and figure out where we wanna go. What?
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to the earlier meeting where we're trying to provide a framework for what's going to happen, and in my mind, removing that altogether doesn't really kind of give a framework of what we're trying to accomplish. If we can kind of have some wording in there, you know, I kind of like this, but maybe it's still too specific, but something's got to be in there
Yeah.
to give some guidance to the next board.
So John has heard all our comments,
Okay.
and he's got the legal, you know, he knows that there's some issues maybe legally. He'll work on something, and then we get to discuss it again next meeting.
mostly what I'm thinking, I'm gonna just go look and see what all the others said.
Yeah. And I think you're gonna find a lot easier on other ones, because most of them already had central bus, central transportation, you know, we don't here.
Union contracts, basically you say you're gonna keep what's in place till they expire, and then you renegotiate master. I put master and individual contracts to leave the most flexibility, because I don't know what you'll end up doing, and unless you feel strongly that you don't wanna have, you specifically don't wanna put anything about individual contracts in there.
Go ahead, Dan.
So this is a bit of a bugaboo, because Marlboro has just year-to-year contracts, and our teachers are not parts of the union, which is distinctly different than Dover and Wardsboro, and something that Marlboro would very much like to keep. So I don't know how we build this in. I don't know if there are any or how many schools in the state have an agreement like we have with our teachers, but we value it. It works well. Teachers obviously could become unionized in a flash if they wanted to. So I would like to see something in there that allows Marlboro to continue along those lines. Budget to be obviously comparable with other schools, but the flexibility to do the hiring and firing within Marlboro Elementary.
Since it's all the same employer, and it's really the same job, teachers, I don't think that can happen. I think it would either be individual contracts that somehow all the unions said we don't care anymore, or it would be an association of some kind.
Well, let's run that by the lawyers also, because I'd
Yeah,
like to see that
absolutely.
if we could.
Absolutely.
But again, I wanna go back to, there's no more Marlboro Elementary School, so there is no more agreement with Marlboro teachers. Every teacher, whether I'm teaching in Marlboro or in Dover and Wardsboro's building, I'm not a Marlboro teacher, I am a teacher of the whatever. Yeah.
Seaweed.
And that's, again, Dan, I mean, that's, if we were just gonna, if we were gonna say, we're still gonna be the Wardsboro and the Dover, and we're all gonna do our own thing, and we're not, then that's not what Act 46 is about, and I will guarantee that it will get thrown out, or they don't disapprove, they're just gonna tell us, ship it back, John, and make it work better.
I'm
But
pretty
it's
sure that's the
worthwhile,
case.
we can ask, because it's always worth asking, but I think, I wouldn't hold my breath that you're gonna get it, unfortunately. But I think too, a contract You have a contract, and we
A
have a
1 year.
contract. Right, you have a 1 year, we have a 5 year, and Wardsboro's part of the, Wyndham Central, so there'll be something that will be done.
1 year.
It also could be that the new board would say, this one and the Leland and Gray Union District, if that forms, would say, look, we all want to hire through the supervisory union.
Well, technically,
And they'll
the
just-
law says we have to do that anyways
Yeah.
now.
So,
Yes, Karen?
Maybe it's something along the lines of, the individual buildings of the WeSeed are allowed to hire teachers who are not a part of a union, so that you don't have to hire within the union, you can't do that?
I don't think I think there's something in labor law that will probably smack you pretty hard on that, but we can ask John to find out.
yeah. And
He's
the
gonna
individual
ask about
buildings
that.
aren't employers, so that's, the individual buildings aren't
I know that,
employers.
so as I said that, I said WeSeed is allowed to hire teachers who are not in the union. I mean, if not, that's would be a potentially bigger deal breaker than
it's
K
a-
through 8 versus K through 6.
You remember, no teacher's required to join the union if
Right.
they're in a union building. But they all have to have the opportunity to join. And you can't say that, oh, because I'm in the Marlboro building, I don't want, you can't join the union if you're in the Marlboro building. I'm sure that's got a
Right,
huge
right.
labor impact.
Sure.
Right.
So,
But Carol Ann's point is, even one teacher of our could join the union, and the rest could choose not to.
Well,
if
Right.
there was this
yeah,
or
but,
somehow-
and that's part of the law. You don't have to join the union. I think we have agency fee now, so, they have to pay the agency fee. That was your fault. I am against that. But anyways,
Yeah, it's not about whether individual teachers belong to the union, it's about what are the wages and what are the benefits and working
And that's what I'm
conditions.
saying about hiring.
Right.
We're able to hire teachers who are not in the union, and that
you can
way-
now.
You can.
You
Right,
actually, the
so-
teacher will probably not be in the union when you hire them unless they're already in that school district. If we hire a person from Brattleboro, they're not in our union.
And not to belabor this, because I think we've got a lot more to do on it, but one of the big advantages of, it's not just that Marlboro likes not having union teachers, having non-union teachers, it's that we really like negotiating directly with the teachers. We sit down with them, we say, well, this is what we're asking you to do, what are your qualifications, hire you. So that's, just so everybody knows, we're not trying to just bust the union, we like the one-on-one negotiations.
Okay, yes, one, two. Oh, go ahead. She said you go first.
Okay, just a question about the word transition. Is that implying the 2019 date when things start, or is that if a teacher was hired on a 5-year contract starting, let's say, this September? Is that 5-year transition? I'm not sure what the
The
word
transitions, so whatever agreement expires.
Whatever the
Yeah,
agreement.
whatever there's-
Technically, you're only allowed 3-year contracts.
Okay.
We cheated a little bit, because we just hate negotiations too. But all our contract will expire before this too. And actually, Wyndham Central's only been negotiating 1-year contracts also for the last 3 or 4 years. Okay, let's move on.
No, I need to have,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Back to your concern, Dan, wouldn't your town's representatives who serve on the new board be able to bring those opinions and feelings that you just expressed to the new board? So what your concern is that they wouldn't be heard, or they'd be outvoted, or they'd be,
the concern would be that I would ideally would like to see it built into the articles that this board would have the option, the ability to do exactly what we're talking about. As of this year, it doesn't look like it would.
right, but I don't think they could guarantee you that one building would have all 9.
Well, so I'm gonna just end that there because John's gonna check into that, and we'll have an answer at the next meeting, because we don't know for sure. We all have our separate
Right.
opinions, and John will find out and get the ultimate.
And we're advisable.
The ultimate answer. I think it's 46, if I'm not mistaken.
The answer, yeah,
Isn't it 46?
everything comes down to
To
46.
46, I believe.
Oh, wasn't that a board?
Funny number.
Okay, Article 6, buddy.
Curriculum alignment, that's really what you're doing now. And the only thing I added there that's different is to have a place that speaks about the culture and maintaining cultures through personalized learning and flexible pathways. And I think this could be a place where you do a little bit more about, say a little bit more about cultures and reference a bigger piece. I think that could go there
Those are
nicely.
things that Randy and Dan had talked about.
Yeah.
Be a great place for it, yeah.
Yeah, this is what it's gotta be.
Okay.
Number 7, transfer of resources.
So this is just straight out of state law when you form a union, how you go about transferring resources to the new entity. Frank Rucker wrote this, actually.
Any questions? Article 8.
I assume that means the school buildings also, right?
Yeah, because that's the next one, transfer of real property.
Yeah.
And again, that's really same thing using state law.
Okay, now where's the one that goes, if you decide to close the building, not use it as a school anymore, it gets sold back to the town?
It's
The town has-
coming.
Okay,
It's
that's
coming.
not in this one. Composition of the school board.
Whoa,
Go ahead, Dan. Grab it.
Transfer of real property.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put this exactly, but all 3 of the schools have different assets, for lack of a better word, things around their school, but on the school property. For example, we have a large solar array back here. We have a ball field. Wardsboro has a ball field.
Marlboro's got a transfer or.
Yeah, you got a transfer station. I mean, wouldn't we be smart to transfer some of that property to town ownership before this happens? I mean, you guys in Marlboro don't want to own a solar array necessarily in Dover, right?
That brings up a point.
And there's agreements between the town and the school in Dover about how those energy credits are applied to town buildings, and if all of a sudden this goes to a new district, I'm just trying to think,
Yeah, yeah.
we can avoid those problems by doing something before this becomes problematic. We probably should.
Somebody looked up the ownership of the Marlboro Elementary School, and it actually sits on property owned by the town of Marlboro. It was deeded to the town of Marlboro, so our ball field and our transfer station
That's
actually
good.
belong to the town.
I think that's an advantage to you guys.
I don't know how we got
I
away
mean,
with
it seems to me that the property line for the school ought to end like 1 foot outside of the wall, you know? Just to,
Well,
I
look,
think it muddies it, less muddy.
look at the deeds and see who actually owns the
Oh,
property. It may
it's
need
just
to be
research and get people that know
I
more
think
than I
that's
do
been
about it.
solid in this town. I think the school.
So listen,
actually
why
does.
don't we ask John to look into that?
Right,
And the other
transferring,
thing is,
yeah.
I think that's part of also his inventory of debt and assets of the properties. And so let's see what that looks like. I mean, it may be more similar than we think, Randy, or maybe a lot more.
Yeah,
Right.
but you
But
know.
it's a
what-
point
what-
that we need to
I
consider.
mean, what does the town have, or what does the school have here, 30-some odd acres?
Right.
You know,
Right.
Does all that need to go to the new district?
Well, yeah, because if it's in the school's name, I mean, technically, that's what this article says. Or
But should it
this-
stay in the
This is a
school's
state
name?
law. Well, that would be something that if the town changes that before the meeting.
That's what I mean.
Before this date, then you're just transferring whatever's left.
Right.
But that's not anything the group is gonna do. That would be more of a town, individual town doing that.
Town and school should discuss that, but
Yeah.
it's something to have a discussion about.
Absolutely. Composition of the board, so I did the various scenarios. All that is just suggestions. I mean, a lot of it depends on size of boards, but kind of how many people you think would be good on a board. But typically, though, you need to do it by population. So,
I guess, I'm confused because I thought this group was done by population too,
which group?
this study group.
Oh,
It is, but we are 10. his proposal for Dover, Wardsboro, Marlboro is only 6, but if it were boosted up to 10, then it would be, this would be the proportion.
Oh, okay. So, I guess then, again, this is kind of a personal preference thing. So, let's think about this, he's given us a couple different thoughts, and we just need to, do we wanna have a 10-member board? Do we wanna have a 3-member board, one from each town? Do we wanna have, or if Vernon, it would have to be a minimum of 5. Again, I wouldn't get too hung up on even and odd numbers, because if it's even, the chairman doesn't vote. Except to create or break the tie, and we can think about that. And so John's basically showing you what the population is in here, so we have those rough numbers. Wait,
Just, it doesn't, the percentages don't add up for 3 members, so I'm wondering, because you just removed Vernon, looks like, for 3-member board. But they look pretty similar.
3-town.
3-town board, excuse me.
Yeah.
So I
Did I
don't
miss
know.
that one? Which one?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the number of
Oh, yeah.
boards, so I'm not sure what the percentage would be if it was, I'm not that quick to math, but.
It's okay. I think the percent, yeah, but the numbers I think work, just, I
Just
didn't
percentages.
carry the percentages over.
Mhm.
Thanks for catching that. Cut and paste error. So then the next article, you just have to elect people so that you stagger the terms as much as possible, so you're not having a total turnover. And you could move it around any way you liked it.
I know that one of the issues at WCSU is that those members, I believe, are elected from the population of all of the towns, rather than from the individual towns. So in other
So
words,
they're all at large?
yeah, I believe so. So people from Brattleboro can elect all people from Brattleboro, I think is the way theirs is set up. And I believe ours should be, if you're gonna have 2.
Thank God.
By round.
No,
Wow,
that's
that's
a
loud.
It's
Like
like,
you said.
So,
What's
and that's what this shows, Dan. This isn't there's no at-large, he's showing people elected from the individual towns.
It doesn't state that though, does it?
I thought it did, so I just have to
Okay.
find where it is.
Yeah, okay, well, that just, it implies it, certainly, yes.
Right.
Yeah, because if not, if it was all combined, then you wouldn't have it all divided up, you would just say that,
Yeah.
that there was,
I think it's at the end of Article 11, the second paragraph of Article 11.
Okay, yeah.
yeah, okay, will be
Right,
elected by
okay.
voters in individual
Right.
towns.
Okay, yeah, perfect, yeah.
So, let's go from, I think Article 10, everybody's pretty good with, you can adjust that as, if Vernon says that they have no interest, and the Vernon vote got pushed off to,
Can we just touch on that for a second?
yeah.
Looking at this. We're offering a lot of clout in a new district to a town that is not participating in the formation of the articles. For-
Well, and that's 'cause
And
of
we
the
agreed to do that, don't get
population.
me wrong, but at some point, we have to say to them, you either need to jump in with both feet and tell us you're gonna go through with this, or we're taking you off and you're not involved. Otherwise, we're creating articles for a town that really isn't participating in the process.
But that's a lot of votes.
Exactly.
And a
Yeah, I
proportion.
mean, this really puts it there clearly and squarely in front of us.
Yeah.
But that was also our decision, because we can decide right now to just remove Vernon from all the calculations, and if Vernon comes in and says they wanna do something, but I think it's good for us.
No, I'm not arguing it now, I just think that's something we have to keep in the back of our minds, and fairly soon, we're gonna have to
Well,
pick a direction.
we are, because, looking at the thing is, by November, beginning of December, we wanna try to have the articles to be able to ship out.
So, Vernon has sent a representative to one meeting, and, are they really enthusiastic about this, or are they just doing their due diligence?
Okay, so, you know what, I will make a note that it should call Vernon and just let him know, ask him what's going on, and are they gonna participate
Yeah,
at all?
that's my real point, is that if they're gonna participate, then they should participate.
Good point, Randy, thank you. Can we move on to 11 then?
So 11 specifies how you're going to be electing board members. Appreciate any help on that next paragraph, the one that starts with candidates for the WCED board, just because it, I mean, it made sense to me. I wrote it and rewrote it, but I want to make sure it makes sense to a normal human being.
I think it works really well.
Rich?
Yes.
No,
Oh.
but earlier we were talking about flexibility, you know, like any two or something like that,
Flexibility too.
of forming a union, right?
Yeah.
So, does that mess up the proportion? So you're thinking about
No, because he's
everyone
got it listed in
forward.
there different ways, if there's only 2 towns, and the proportion seems to be, if you have a
Consistent
smaller
regardless.
board, right, it's without Vernon, it's everybody seems to be 2. So if only 2 towns, it's a 4-member board, if it's 3 towns, it's a 6-member board. Right?
Or it could be what you want. I mean,
It could be 10, 3, 3,
Well,
4.
You could decide what you want,
Yeah.
as far as the size of the board.
I think we need
But
to
is that your question, though?
revisit.
I think that we just need to be cognizant of how we set that up and how the elections go as well, right? So making sure that we're good, you know, okay, so if we were to set up any 2, this is what that would look like. Yep, that works, or.
Right, that would be in Article 10, would have the numbers.
Mhm. But then
And
it
it-
matches with the election.
And it does, because he's saying that you're not running for a particular seat, it just whoever gets the most votes gets the longest seat, and you move on down the line.
Mhm.
So like now, when we run in Dover, and I don't know how it is in Marlboro and Wardsboro, I run for a 3-year seat.
Mhm.
Somebody else runs for a 2-year seat. What they're saying is, all the people run, whoever got the most votes, you get the longest seat, the next guy gets the second, and that's what you put in. And that's in Article 11, and I think that works pretty well.
I think my point is more around just making sure that, if we switch up the proportions of who's coming together, making sure that doesn't switch up the proportion of how many board members need to be elected from the towns. It looks like everything's consistent, like regardless as to who matches up, you end up with the same number of board members from each school. But that was where my question was more around, if we get messed up with proportions somewhere.
It will be in the individual town, because if Dover will have 2 no matter what, so we would want 2 people on the ballot at least.
Mhm.
And then
Go ahead.
if Vernon decides to be part of this, you know, they would need 4, but it still doesn't change our 2 that we need.
If we go with a 6-person board.
Right. But we're gonna have to decide that before we vote, because this has to be he's giving us some options
Mhm.
now. Next time we go through the articles, we have to narrow those down and decide, do we want a 6 or 10, and then this will fit that.
I'm just
when it gets
walking
there.
through potential wrinkles, that's
Yeah.
all.
Okay, Randy and then Carol. And
I would be less inclined to run for a seat on this board or any board if my term was open-ended. In other words, if I got the most votes, I'm gonna be on a 3-year term. I may not want a 3-year term. I may only want a 2-year term.
That's what I was gonna say.
I think that's totally off base, no offense, but I think we need to spell out exactly what term someone will run for.
Yes.
It's hard enough to get people to run for seats on any board, let alone leaving it open-ended like
Yeah.
this. I just think that's a recipe for non-participation.
That's
But
what
well
I was gonna
stated.
say.
A goofy idea,
Well,
but very well
No,
stated.
I don't think it's goofy, I just
Just-
think it's.
let me just ask, as a poll straw of this group, because we're the ones that have to vote, how many would wanna see the open-ended thing, so the most voted getter gets the biggest term, or that you wanna have specific terms that you'd be elected for? So who would wanna see an open-ended thing where you just have names on the ballot? Anybody? Who wants to see specific terms? Okay, there you go. See how easy that was?
Great.
Thank you.
But what about the coin flip?
I love the coin flip. I thought that was awesome.
We do that before the clock starts.
Dan,
That was my best idea.
I like it. Leave that in, no matter what.
Yeah, you can leave the coin flip in.
Okay, board start date and operation. I mean, I think that's,
I think that's pretty straightforward.
Anybody have a problem with number?
You may
12?
want to think about the bullets that you want to put in there that sort of, in part, just to let people know what the work of this board will be prior to the start of the school district.
So, instead of hammering them out now, because we're getting kind of towards the end, if you think of something, email me, I'll put them together and I'll get them to John. Transportation, please.
Done.
Okay. Everybody good? Move forward. Article 13, budget development.
Just a budget, annual budget, conducted by Australian ballot, combining the total votes in the member towns. Here's where, you know,
That's what
the question about whether you wanted it to be a certain number of towns or.
Everybody good? Any thoughts or comments, or you like that? We'll leave it.
So they all have to be Australian ballot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to make it that way.
At the
Well-
same date, on the same date.
Yes, Laura? Laura's frowning at you. She's not. All set? Go ahead, Randy.
Just for a point of clarity, could you go the other route and make all the budgets voted on by floor vote? Or does it have to be Australian ballot?
One floor vote.
Yeah.
So they have to all be in the same room?
Yes.
So that
But
doesn't,
you could-
Leland and
well,
Gray
you
used to
could
do that. They all
You
used to
could
show.
do
but you couldn't do it on town meeting day then?
That's all right.
And for the working schmo who doesn't get the day off?
You don't get to vote.
So you don't get to vote?
Yeah, I don't like that, sorry. I have a problem with it, huge problem with it.
I'm not necessarily advocating, somebody's gonna ask that question.
No, I like town meeting because when you vote by Australian ballot, people could be voting it down because they don't think it's high enough, or they could be voting it down because they think it's too high. You
Right.
have no,
You have no
when we
feedback.
go there and we discuss it at town meeting, and if it's really important to people, they will take the day
So you have a
off.
pre-town meeting and you have
Right.
all the conversation,
There's no pre-town meeting. This is not a town
Would be a
anymore.
pre-district.
whatever,
meeting.
pre-district,
District,
school
yeah,
budget
district meeting.
meeting.
Right.
It's informational though, it's not modification.
Right,
Right.
so,
Well,
and
moving forward, you're creating new.
but it can't be changed either. I mean, once what's presented doesn't get changed. It would maybe give the board, the group a little bit of leeway, but
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. I mean,
Well, it is a big
It
deal
is a big
actually, and I
deal.
think
There's nothing-
it's something, I
You
think.
can't do anything with it.
Yes, well, you can. We could decide, we could say, we're gonna have town meeting on Saturday before, we're gonna have a district meeting
A
on
district
Saturday
meeting on
before.
Saturday and have a
Yeah.
floor vote on it,
Yeah.
and maybe that's what we wanna do.
I mean,
at
we
least.
could, doesn't mean we should, or we will, but we could.
We could allow the possibility in the language. It would have to be one central location, probably here, and
What's wrong with an Australian ballot?
The-
Do you have an Australian ballot in Marlboro right now?
No.
It just,
And the
it just
same-
doesn't allow
the
for.
same-
Okay,
60
what,
people.
hey guys, this isn't conversations between individuals, okay? So there's two possibilities. We can go Australian ballot, or we could try to have a district meeting. I know that like at Leland and Gray and other areas, they've tried to do the district meetings and they haven't worked. That's why they went to Australian ballot. They were having 10 people approve a budget. You know, so that's why they went to that. But that's our decision. We get to put that in the articles. We can either put, you know, that the new group will have to decide, or you can put in one or the other. So we need to make that decision as a group here, and then the voters will get to decide when they get to vote on this articles by Australian ballot. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so what I
And then
think
you can
people
go
like
next.
about town meeting is the vibrant conversation that comes out of it. I'm all in favor of that. So why can't you have the vibrant conversation on, I'm making this day up, February 12th, you have the conversation, these people really think we need all new computers, these people think we need new playgrounds, whatever it is, you have the conversation, and if you have to tweak the budget, you have to tweak the budget.
You can't tweak the budget, unfortunately, because the budget's
Whatever the
already
dates
set.
are, so that you can, I mean,
Well,
just.
that's called school board meetings when you set up your budget.
Okay, but why, you said you can't modify, you said if you have an Australian ballot and you don't know if people are voting it up or voting it down because you don't know why.
Because what
You'd still
happens-
have this opportunity
if we
through the
have a meeting
conversation.
To have the vibrant discussion, we'll have the vibrant discussion, but it's on this article, right? The time to have your thing that I think we need computers is while the group is building the budget, that's months before.
I know all that, but I'm
Okay.
saying,
Well,
you
obviously-
still need, so what's the point of town meeting? Then in other words, what you're saying is it's an up-down vote
I'm
at
just
town
saying
meeting.
personally, I like town meetings, okay?
I like town
So,
meetings too.
But that's
I just
fine,
think
and
that
that's not what the
people,
discussion is about. So I'm gonna end
But I-
that there,
I just think you can
and I'm
have
gonna
your
let the board,
conversation.
yep.
Well,
I'm gonna
You
go
two are
there
in
and
radical
there.
agreement right now.
yeah.
I know that.
Yeah. But I'm gonna suggest that we try to work it in here that the board can decide, because that is right now, a town can make that decision. Next year, Marlboro could be voting at an Australian ballot. If this board has the option, the new board, they could change from year to year. I don't
Can we leave that open?
I'm gonna look at law, I'm not sure, it seems to me I looked that up one time and it wasn't, that a union school district had to be by Australian ballot, but I'm gonna double check that and see.
And then we'll just end that conversation.
This was a very significant discussion in the legislature this year, and in talking with Dave Sharp, his suggestion actually was the first meeting should be a town meeting, and the question as to whether or not budgets would be voted on by Australian ballot or by town meeting should be
Decided
at that meeting by the voters.
Well, let's find out, and then we'll all know the answer, and we can discuss this at the next meeting. I mean, whatever we decide now too, Carol, doesn't end, because we're gonna go through it again. And-
Yeah, I know, I'm just,
Yeah.
it's a pet peeve of mine that a lot of people don't get to vote on their school budget.
So, Article 13,
David Sharp, you said? His representative?
He's the chair of House Ed.
Okay.
so are we good on Article 13? Well, I mean, we're
I
not
don't
good,
think
but
so.
is there-
We agreed to radically agree.
We've agreed
We'll
to
move
do
on,
that.
though.
Article 14, continuance of existing boards.
This just says existing boards continue for no more than a year to take care of anything left over from the prior 2018-19 school year.
And that's been in almost every article
Yeah.
I've seen.
Seems fairly boilerplate.
Yeah.
Article 15, he doesn't have anything in there. If you guys can think anything, a lot of some of that's been the questions we've been discussing, and John will work on that. And next meeting, we'll have a better, hopefully we'll have something. This is the meat and potatoes of why we're doing this, so this is the important part. So think on that hard, guys. Article 16, school choice and school continuity.
May I?
Yep, on Article 16.
Yes,
Yes.
so I
Shoot.
think we actually need to be probably a bit more specific about this, maybe citing current law about choice, as towns, you know, we're border towns here, some of us. And kids go out of state, that's been a question, some kids go out of state, so we may wanna be a little bit more specific about citing the existing law, or what it is that we intend for around choice.
I think that adds clarity if we do that.
And then, so that's on the
Rich.
secondary? Are you talking secondary?
Secondary.
So that's that first sentence, students in grade,
Mhm.
okay.
So we're adding secondary?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think it says it, students in grade 7 will all
Secondary.
have
Well,
an
that's true, yeah.
opportunity for school choice.
Secondary.
And I'll cite Vermont law there.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Blaine.
Just, I'm not completely sure, doesn't the town, right now, doesn't the town need to vote on what the cost is going to be
No.
given? So, but
You
right
can,
now,
You
Yes.
can, but you don't have to.
so you don't have to. But if you don't do, I mean, explain to me how that works right now.
So if you don't vote anything different, you get whatever public school tuition that child wants to attend. So if they wanna go to Burlington High School, that's $50,000 a year, you have to pay for
You'll
it.
get the,
Or the default is the statewide average high school tuition, or the tuition. That's what they get if they go to a private or a non-public school that's
that's,
on
so
the
if you
approved
don't
list.
vote on it, that's what
If
you
you
get.
don't vote another,
There's one.
or the electorate can vote another number. So the default is whatever public school or another number. If you vote another number, if you vote to make it, that's just for schools that aren't public high schools, because we already have to pay whatever the public high school
So
amount is.
if this board decides to do something different than that, who will vote on that? Will it be the district?
The whole district, and
district
it
will
would
need to
be for
vote on it.
everybody in that district would
So
get that number.
should we put some verbiage in here regarding that? If the-
No, because they have, the people have the right to petition that, and that's something that has to be done every year. So we can't say that there will be another number in there.
No, I'm not suggesting that, I'm just suggesting that maybe some little more
And
clarity.
How does that get voted on by Australian?
That's
So we need to
writing
find
note to
out.
myself.
Okay,
Brandy, you have your?
Last line of Article 16, what happens if the town doesn't want the building back?
where are we? I
Last
didn't
line
get
of
there.
Article 16.
That's the next page.
Well, that's the last, yeah, right.
So let's just put,
I mean-
will be offered to the
Didn't we put offered?
You put will be returned.
Well, I think to protect the district, you want to leave will be returned. So you don't get the issues like what's going on in Wilmington right now.
Well, actually, that, if the towns have voted on that,
Because they've already voted on
They've
this.
approved it.
Yeah, so they have to take it back, basically. I think you want to do that.
So you like that? Just leave it? Or,
Yeah,
okay.
because I think it avoids, it provides clarity down the road. The Twin Valley District has run into a real problem right now because they basically got a hot potato of a building that nobody wants.
And I really hate this. I'm sorry, I forgot to make, WC will follow the rule below when considering. So it's almost like we're gonna consider it soon. So can it be if considering? If considering closing, I mean, it's just
Sure.
when, it's sort of like, you know it's
Yeah,
gonna happen.
yeah, no, you're right.
Not inevitable.
And then you also have to think about which are, I'm sorry, James.
I just want to speak in favor of or, the second sentence paragraph, rather than the first one. I like that. It does throw it to the town, and that also means, like you point out, John, that the town will already have agreed to close its school when it is accepting its white elephant back for $1. That's my thought. I prefer
So
that.
what I was gonna ask is, do people have a preference in one or the other? Do we wanna leave it vague for now and come back to it, or do we wanna do a straw poll and say we really like A or B?
Oh, I think we want to have it in the voters, not the board's hands.
So you want the or?
I want the or, I agree.
Is there anybody that doesn't want the or, really wants the other one? Okay, why don't you, so there, you can be able to take something out of there.
nice.
Now we're gonna be only 15 pages.
Only the existing town can close the school.
Right.
That's,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, there's no time limit on this, so some
Right.
people put a time limit on
Like,
it.
for the first, no school can be closed for the first 5 years.
Or that this would be in effect for 5 years or something. I mean, just remember, you can talk about times if you want.
You looking
Do
confused?
we, aren't, some of the other districts have included that in there, haven't
Yeah.
they?
I think they've
5-year
included time for
timeline.
not closing.
Usually, the standard is that no school be closed the first 3, 4, 5, 300 years.
I think we want.
But this was an alternative that the Red Study Committee came up with. They thought that was better, so it wasn't, there was no years involved, it was in perpetuity.
And I think if you again, you tie the hands of the board, I mean, this new
Yeah, I
board
see
may
that,
get together
yeah.
and everybody, 2 towns may vote to close their schools, and we've tied their hands that they gotta keep them for another 5
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, no, I see that.
Okay, you good, Dwayne?
I'm just kind of curious, Jamaica tried to get out of the union there, that's not the same as closing their school. If they wanted to close their school currently, could they do it the same way as this?
If
the way
Jamaica
that's-
wanna close their school now, they
They
can
can
just
do it.
close it.
All right,
Yeah,
so
they
just-
don't
that's
need
another
anybody
question.
else's vote.
I was just kind of curious. Okay.
Remember, the vote was for the
No.
Leland and Gray, for the high school, not the elementary school.
Okay.
And remember too, when these articles are together, there is no more Wardsboro, Dover, or Marlboro School, there's this new district. School assignments, number 17.
So basically, this is about whether you want to put anything in here for school choice at the elementary level.
Which I would say goes back to that earlier question about cultures, potentially. Like keeping, the unique cultures, although getting more standardized with curriculum.
Well, continue on down, Laura, because you'll see that there's an or here also, which is basically what you're saying.
And I think, I like the or because that's providing that's really opportunity. I mean, we're talking about student opportunity. If a student, there's only one boy and there's 7 girls in the 5th grade in the Dover building, and in the Marlboro building, there's 5 boys, and he wants to go there to be with more boys, and, who are we to say? I think they should be able to attend any school or why are we doing this?
It's something to consider. That's what, in the context of that earlier question, I think.
I would suggest you talk about these, but leave them both in there for now, because this is a pretty big decision, involves transportation, involves class size, I mean, there's a lot of.
And then we could also put in there, though, if a student chooses to go to a school not in their town or to a building not in their town, Transportation will be at the expense of the family choosing? Or does that have to be transportation?
You know, you could put it here, the
No,
difficulty you run into.
don't do that, I'm just asking a question.
No, I'm not. The difficulty you run into is, so now we're saying rich kids can have school choice and poor kids can't. That's what that language gets interpreted as.
Okay.
That's the real issue, so.
Well, maybe this third grader who's 18 years old doesn't drive himself.
Yeah, and take a few kids with them.
Article 17, we're gonna leave for now, folks, then, if everybody's okay with that.
But keep thinking about it, because
Yeah.
it's an important article, I think.
And I will say, I think that we could accomplish what we want to by using the first two sentences, not the or, but by beefing up the second sentence there. The board will develop a policy to guide in cases where it's basically advantageous, and then transportation could be included in that somehow. It's possible that we could accomplish everything.
And then, hey, Article 18, we're gonna name this the Dan article. And this is kind of matches what we had from Bill, right?
Does it? It probably does, because I think some of this was language that we didn't, I couldn't remember whether I took it from the other read or study or from what Bill said, so I think does match more what Bill said.
So on this one, we'll leave this for now. We handed out a bunch of stuff earlier about advisory in the councils. So just look at that, compare that, because we're running really late. But I think we got a lot of work done.
Yes, we did.
And I think it was good to do that. Plus, we've covered everything else on the agenda already, with the exception of, so the next meeting is October 13th in Marlboro, and then October 27th in Dover. I actually had it November 10th in Wardsboro. And, what?
Nothing?
Okay. All I need, so does anybody have anything else, any thoughts, comments, parting statements? Go ahead, Randy.
Since I was late, and the reason was, our delivery guy for the Valley News had the day off today, so I had to deliver newspaper. So, I brought a whole bundle in. Everybody's welcome to take a copy of the Valley News. It's hot off the press, 3 hours
Are you
ago.
bribing us?
Huh? No, it's a free.
Oh.
No. I do have a kid in college though, so if you want to leave me $1, by all means do, but you don't have to.
Pardon? Next meeting is at Marlboro, yes? 6:30. We've decided all meetings are at 6:30. Dwight, you can't leave for a minute. And you can't leave either. I'll talk to you, Randy.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else? Any words of wisdom?
Did I miss something in the any updates to this timeline page? or
No.
should I-
John is gonna work on adding the dates and the locations for us. And other than that, there wasn't any changes to that. So as soon as he gets them, I think that would be a better thing to put out than the one that doesn't have the dates.
And I will post that when it's available.
Yep.
Got it.
And you're on the email list now, so we'll make sure we
I am.
get you. And I gotta remember to add John on the email list. Anything else?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Dan moved, we adjourned, Randy seconded it. Everybody in favor? Cool, thank you, folks, great meeting.
Charge.